Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Lawsplaining the Interwebs. I'm your host, Nick Rekieta of Rekieta Law, a small law firm in central Minnesota. And with me today are two very special guests. We have Mr. Chuck Dixon and Mr. Brett Smith. How are you guys doing?
Awesome.
Really good. Great to be here.
Well, thank you. Thank you for coming on. I'm happy to have you guys on. We are here to talk about a whole bunch of stuff. Comic books, entertainment. I kind of wrap all this stuff into a term called escapism. I'm sure you guys are familiar with that term and that idea. And then how kind of it clashes with culture. And so that is kind of the idea here, because we seem to be finding that clash between entertainment and culture all over the place, and with devastating results to lives, careers, to reputations. And I figured we could have a discussion about that. And also, I'll say this now, but we're going to say it more as we get going. In the description link is an Indiegogo campaign that you guys need to check out, and we'll show it on stream in a little while. It is for Black Tide Rising, which is a new graphic novel that you guys have put together. Is that right?
That's right.
Accurately relayed that.
Yep.
Okay. So we'll talk about Black Tide Rising in a little bit. First, we should probably just BS for a little bit as people kind of get notifications and filter in. And then we'll kind of get to know you guys, because I know a little bit about you too, but not a ton. And so I'd like to get to know you guys a little bit more, your history. I think some of my audience is probably more familiar, because I used to buy comic books and then I stopped for a very long time and kind of fell out of that world, and have over the past year really kind of been pulled back in as that's the stuff I end up covering and the people I end up talking to. And of course that kind of piques my interest. So you guys have like really, impressive careers doing stuff. and I'm just a guy yelling at a screen. So I like to get to know you guys a little bit better, and also introduce you to anybody in the audience who doesn't know who you are as well, if that's good for you.
Yes, that
sounds good. Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, I guess, who wants to start? Which one of you wants to give your CV first?
Chuck, you can go first if you want. Go for it.
I'll jump in. I'm a professional comic book writer. I've been writing for 35 years plus. Worked on Batman, Punisher, Savage Sword of Conan.
Yeah, but have you worked on any properties anyone's ever heard of, though?
No, I don't think so. All obscure indie, alt entertainment. So nothing mainstream.
Were you invited?
I always have been.
Were you invited to write on the collaborative project Deadbeats? Because that's the only comic book I've ever heard of. No, I'm just kidding.
No.
Okay, so you've had a long storied career, lots of big properties, like you said, Batman, Conan, SpongeBob. Where else might people know you if not from that stuff, or is that, I mean, that covers pretty much the entire country, I think. But
primarily I'm a comic book writer. I mean, I have some novels. I've written about 20 novels, but primarily I'm a comic book guy.
Yeah, and did I read right that you adapted The Hobbit to a graphic novel?
Yeah, that's my biggest selling project ever.
Yeah, that's sounds like a pretty cool one. Yeah. Here's how oblivious I am to everything, because I didn't know that The Hobbit had a graphic novel attached to it. I mean, I figured somewhere in the back of my mind that it did, but I haven't bought graphic novels. So is it one that you get like at Barnes and Noble, or is it through?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so it's like everywhere.
Oh, it's everywhere.
It's
everywhere in every language. It's all over the world. Like I said, it's my biggest seller by far.
Right.
Of anything I've worked on.
I've got to find it, because I want to introduce my kids to Tolkien, and I'm not quite sure they'll appreciate, the full breadth of me just reading words at them. I think my oldest could read Tolkien just fine, but the younger ones, and I think the graphic novel is probably a great way to do that. without, because the movies get a little intense for really little ones.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's fantastic. Oh my goodness. And okay, and so then Brett, how about you? What even are you, sir?
Most people know me as a professional color artist. I've been working. I got my start back in comics back in the mid '90s with Chaos Comics. Brian Polito actually hired me, and that began a 25-year career. And I've worked for Marvel, DC, Image, Dark Horse, and I've colored the Avengers, Batman, Superman, X-Men, Wolverine, and I also work in advertising as a storyboard artist. So I've kind of got these two career paths for 25 years: advertising, comics. And in advertising, I was working on things like campaigns for Chase Bank and Heineken and Miller Beer, and for a lot of the big agencies like Leo Burnett and Saatchi and McCann Erickson.
Sure.
And then back in 2016, I started creating my own graphic novels, and that began with a Clinton Cash graphic novel, which Chuck and I worked on. And I was kind of spearheaded that whole thing. I was basically the book packager, the creative director, project manager, and the editor. And that went #1 on the New York Times bestseller list and hit #1 on Amazon. And that destroyed my career with Marvel and DC. But I had, at that point, I had colored. I had kind of done everything I had ever wanted to do in the comic book industry, as far as working on all these 80-year-old properties that are these legacy properties.
You could join me in the wilderness.
Basically, yeah. I mean, it's funny. Chuck was the first call I made after I was offered that project. It was Peter Schweizer, who was the original author, and Steve Bannon, who approached me to adapt it back
not like
early
the
2015.
Steve Bannon.
Yeah,
Steve Bannon.
One. Oh, wow. He's got some issues going on right now.
Yeah, that was definitely a political hit job.
Oh,
so,
yeah. It's
the timing was interesting.
The timing is always, it's beautiful. I love it. And the news is always like, oh man. It's like,
well, it was interesting because the day that Clinton Cash went #1 on the New York Times bestseller list and also sold out in 24 hours, Steve got the call to go and run Trump's campaign for that last leg, that last push going into November. And, we all know how that turned out. So, interesting guy. It was, it was partially his idea to obtain the graphic rights. He had an idea to take the book and turn that into a graphic novel, which would appeal to Gen Xers and Millennials and Gen Zers. And then they also made a documentary. But, what we did with the book was, out of the 3 kind of iterations of that project, was the most interesting, because we used humor and satire, and it really does read like an old issue of the National Lampoon. So
yeah, even Peter Schweitzer said it was the clearest explanation of the concepts that he uncovered.
Yeah, the original book is pretty dry and boring, and I got cleared by Peter to describe it that way. So and he just loved it. The cover kind of says it all. It's just gorgeous. And I was able to get some pretty amazing talent on this book. We got Graham Nolan, who's another huge, probably one of the most iconic Batman artists, and also the co-creator of Bane, along with Chuck. Paul Ravoche, who's a Warner Brothers animation artist, and also worked for Marvel and DC. Sergio Cariello, who's a tremendously talented guy, Marvel DC guy. So we were all Marvel and DC vets. We were all kind of right of center politically, and that's kind of how we were. That's how I was really able to put together that team, because I offered that project to multiple artists who turned me down because it was just too much of a political hot potato. So
is it a political hot potato because it was mocking the left, or was it, or is any political? Because like if it was Trump Cash or whatever, like would that have been a big deal at all?
Well,
we would have been offered an X-Men book if we did Trump Cash.
Yeah, actually, I did that. It's called Trump Space Force. Chuck and I worked on that too. So no, the difference with the Clintons, it was really twofold. It was finding somebody who, finding artists and creators to work on the book who weren't afraid of tackling something that was overtly political, but also finding people who were comfortable taking on the Clintons. And that was
Right.
a conversation I had with everybody on that book. I said, look, worst case scenario, she wins in 2016 and we all get audited for the rest of our life.
Oh, I
You
don't know
know?
if that's the worst case scenario with the Clintons.
Well, I said that for them. I said that to them. I said, don't worry about it, dude. I said, if they're gonna come after anybody, it's gonna be me, because I'm the guy that went out and hired you and put the whole thing together. And
Have
also,
you met our marketing
you know,
manager, Seth Rich? No, I'm just kidding.
well, I mean, the concept was Chuck and I's. It was both our ideas. I wanted satire. He wanted satire. He was, it was his idea to really crank it up to 11 and make it like an issue of the National Lampoon from the 70s, when it was funny. When John
Right.
Hughes was writing for them and those guys. But and of course nobody figured that it would be as successful as it was. I never figured that it would go #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. That was that to this day, that's still, I kind of look back on that day and I'm just kind of like, wow, that's
Yeah.
pretty tremendous.
How long
So,
until the New York Times bestseller list kills you? No, I'm just kidding.
well, what's funny, they stopped ranking graphic novels after that book.
Yeah, it's amazing how they do that, right?
Yeah.
I heard they had to do that with manga recently because the manga sales got so big in the US that they were just dominating any other books that came out. They're just, One Punch Man or whatever is just blowing the list out. So
yeah. Batman, it was The Killing Joke had been #1 for like a year, which is one of the most, one of those iconic DC Batman stories from the 80s. And we just kind of came literally out of nowhere and knocked this 80-year-old property out of the #1 spot. And we were just this wild card. And the interesting thing about it was nobody in the comic book press covered it. Nobody mentioned it. Nobody interviewed us. Nobody called me. I remember emailing Chuck and saying, have you heard from anybody? And he's like, there's a reason why we're not hearing from anybody. They don't want anybody to know. They don't want anybody to know what we did.
Yeah, there's a divide between the comic book market and the book market anyway. We were definitely book market.
Right. Yeah, and I think that divide is interesting because I don't think, or maybe I'm wrong on this, but I get the perception, at least, that the comic book marketers don't understand how much smaller than the book market they are.
That's for sure.
Because I mean, when you talk about a comic book really taking off from a traditional channel, I've just following the numbers I've seen, you're talking about a book selling 20 to 50,000 copies being, this astronomical success. And that of course is huge. But when you talk about the book market, well, I mean, when you look
it is now, but 10 or 15 years ago, if you weren't breaking 40 or 50,000 print run, you got canceled.
Right. And now you're seeing print runs of like, well, at least maybe I'm reading the numbers wrong, but it's like the top 200 list. Most of the books are in the 3,000 to 5,000 range. I mean, when you get to the top, you're lucky to see 5 figures. Is what I've seen. But I'm of course new to kind of looking at the industry. But then you compare that to something in the book market where like a 50 Shades of Grey goes off and sells 100 million copies.
Right.
And those numbers are so disparate between what a huge book success is and what a huge comic success is. And I think the Marvel comic movies specifically have made the rest of culture think that the comic book industry is so much bigger than it is.
That's the misconception. People don't understand that there's two different entities there. There's the publishing side and the movie side, and they're completely and totally independent of each other. They don't even talk to each other. They don't coordinate.
I wouldn't want to talk to those scumbags either. No, I'm just kidding.
The closest I ever got was I colored Superman when they launched the New 52, and we were doing 112,000 copies on the first print run, which second print run went to 120. We were talking to Nolan and Snyder, and because Man of Steel was just about to come out, they were in post-production, and they didn't want us kind of stepping on their toes or doing anything weird. And then they also wanted to coordinate with us on some kind of design elements and whatnot. So there was a little bit of cohesion, but that's the closest I've ever seen anything like that happening. You know, which is why I get the question all the time. My kids love, I grew up reading comics. My kids love the movies. I want to take them to the comic book store and get them hooked up with some stuff. What do you recommend that I get them? And I tell them nothing. You're not going to find anything that mirrors the silver screen in the books today. Well, what about Iron Man? I said, well, Iron Man's a 15-year-old black girl.
Right.
And Thor is a chick and the Hulk is Asian.
Right. Yeah. If you want to go those, what you need to do is not go to a comic store. You need to go to like a comics reseller and spend actual, money on some of these old iconic stories that MCU is based off of. And they're going to be 20-year-old books that you got to buy. I mean, that's
to be fair, Nolan pulled from Chuck's writing for multiple movies there, but especially Bane on the Dark Knight Rises. So they're pulling, they're kind of mining from the 60s, 70s, and 80s and 90s, but none of those stories really reflect what's going on today. But they're the classic stories which connect with an audience.
Well, it's when they had good writers, I think, and
like that guy.
Yeah, like Chuck.
I know, man.
Well, so just kind of off topic a little bit, but what did you guys think of Man of Steel and like Batman vs. Because I liked Man of Steel.
Me too.
Yeah. I liked that one. I didn't really care for Batman vs. Superman at all. And I hate almost every other DC movie. Even the Nolan Batmans, I'm not the biggest fan of. They're the better ones for me, but so I was kind of curious how you guys, especially Chuck, having worked on these properties, what do you feel about the movies coming out these days?
Well, the DC movies are a mess. They don't base it off the core material as much as they should.
Sure.
In fact, hardly ever. I mean, I don't get the feeling when I watch a DC movie that I'm seeing the comic book recreated. The feeling I got when I was a kid reading a comic book.
Right.
Early Marvel movies, I do get that feeling. Like this is just like the comics. It's the same feel, the same zing that the comics had. But DC, they're too dour, they're too grim. And of course, the Marvel movies have become that way. I mean, Avengers Endgame, it's like, it came with everything but a suicide note. I mean, what a crappy, depressing way to end one of the greatest cinema franchises of all time.
Yeah. There's Avengers Endgame. Now, I will say that I agree with with your assessment of the movie as a whole, but there were some parts of that movie where I felt like, even though it was dour, they handled it really well. Like they actually did a very good job of making me, and maybe this is a bad thing, but making me forget for just a few moments that I was watching a comic movie. And I was like, oh man, I actually like care that some of this stuff happened. That was sad. Cause in Guardians of the Galaxy, which I thought Marvel kind of nailed Guardians, I think they kind of nailed the comic book feel in Guardians 1 really, really well. When bad stuff happens in that movie, you're kind of just like, it's so upbeat and fun and comic book like that you don't really engage the negative emotion as much. But I thought in Endgame they did that, but I don't know if I wanted them to do that so much. I want like the fun stuff, but like the Tony Stark and Spider-Man stuff, I was like, damn, this is brutal.
Well, they did what lazy writers do, is that once you have the characters that the audience likes and they're engaged with and everything else, then you start doing your very special episodes.
Yeah, just kill them.
Avengers Endgame was. It was like, boy, you care so much about these characters, and now we're going to make you pay for it.
Right. Yeah,
and that's how I felt. I mean, they emasculated Thor. They killed Tony, and
the
then
Thor
they
thing
completely
pissed
ruined.
Me off.
Oh, that was ridiculous. I mean, let's all be completely honest here. One of the reasons you get chicks in the theater is for those shirtless shots of Chris Hemsworth. You
Yeah.
know, and I'm all about hitting that commercial through line and getting as much meat in the seats as possible, whether it's, you know, the theater or obviously my books.
Yep.
So I just couldn't believe what they did to him. I just thought it was ridiculous, thought it was stupid. I thought it was a cheap joke, cheap humor. If, you know, if I was Chris, I'd be bailing out and, you know, auditioning for Bond or something at this point.
Well, my one of my internet friends, Dan Fraga, who you guys are probably familiar with, he has a saying called "ass ass titty," and I think that applies equally to Chris Hemsworth.
Oh, of course. Hey, look.
It does with Jason Momoa for sure. I mean, that's the only reason anyone went to see Aquaman that I can figure out is a shirtless Jason Momoa.
It's the same. It's the same with Henry. You know, there's a couple shots in Man of Steel where, you know, he's shirtless in the beginning, and the girls go crazy over that. And
when I heard my grandmother describe Henry Cavill to me, I was like, okay, I'm going to take a shower now. So I know they got it with him. But
that's another guy. That's another guy who would make a perfect Bond follow-up Craig. But I think he's set to be Superman for probably the next 7 or 10 years, because that's usually what those contracts call for. They really go for a long time. It's quite a commitment. But, you know, I mean, the whole point of those guys, they're sculpted to look like Greek gods to a large degree, to be the ideal. That's why I find these fat superheroes that they keep coming out with just hilarious, because it's like the idea that everybody can be a rock star. Well, that means nobody can be a rock star. And it's the same applies to a superhero. If everybody can be a superhero, then there's nothing super about it. But I always kind of liken Michelangelo's David to the first image of a superhero. You know, the head's a little bit oversized, got big hands, huge deltoids, traps. There's some exaggerated elements of that anatomy to make him look heroic. Mm-hmm. And that's the same with what superheroes, you know, emulate, you know?
Yeah. And that's, that's the point of, and that's why
they're meant to be attractive.
Right. And this year, that's why I've been talking about escapism in general, is we are meant to be pulled away from seeing a bunch of, you know, unshapely people at the grocery store and not thinking that the guy who just bagged your groceries, who's 250 pounds and not in the I just got out of the gym way, is the guy who's going to save you when a helicopter crashes on your house, right? That's not the guy I want showing up. And plus, I don't know if the rascal will get him there fast enough. I need the superhero. And so I don't know what, well, I'm sure we all know kind of what is driving this, but it's the destruction of the escape that is, for me, the most aggravating thing. And it's the forced doing it. It's doing it to these legacy properties, especially, that I think is the most offensive. Because if you want to make, like, I find it charming when I see like a new book. I don't know which one I saw the other day, but it had like a complete diversity hire cast of characters on the cover. And it was like, oh, empowerment for all these different classes of people. And I was like, you know, that X-Men existed, right? Like, Professor Xavier is in a wheelchair, and that doesn't slow him down because he has this other stuff that's amplified and powerful. And the entire mutant thing can be used as so many metaphors about growing up, about finding identity, about being different, about being a minority, about, you know, all of these things are already baked into the genre. You don't have to force it, and we don't have to like try and make people, I don't know. And
X-Men, Chuck, you correct me if I'm wrong. X-Men, I think first X-Men is 1969, 1968, 1969. So I mean,
the first comic?
Yeah.
Oh no, much earlier than that. I was a kid.
The first X-Men?
I'm going to say 64, 65. Kirby Lee brought out it came out the same month as Avengers #1.
But it's reflecting what's going on within the culture and society to a degree. I've read Stan was using it as allegories. Yeah,
and because of that, I didn't like it when I was a kid. I thought they were all liars. You know, it's like, oh, I've got wings and I can fly, and people don't like me. And it's like, you got wings and you can fly, you moron.
He's also really handsome. He's also really
Yeah,
handsome.
that too. And you got this. You're living at this fabulous school, all expenses paid. What the hell's wrong with you? I mean, I'm going to public school. I got thick glasses. You know. I mean, come on. I mean, I'm put upon too. We're all put upon. And then when they exploded, and well, it's an allegory about race, and I was like, yeah, but it's not entertaining. It didn't entertain me. It's the only Kirby project when I was a kid I didn't buy. I bought the first issue, and I thought, I don't like any of these characters. So I stopped buying.
So you never liked X-Men at the beginning?
No, never. I haven't got a bit of use for them.
That's crazy. It's not crazy, but it's interesting to come across. You're insane, sir. How dare you not like this one thing?
Everyone else likes it. You have to like it.
I never,
Get on the bus.
Eat your broccoli.
I never liked the first cast. You know, I liked the Cockrum Claremont reboot with the new characters, and I'd say 90% of that draw for me was that little Canadian Canuck called Wolverine. Who at the time was just kind of like a sort of a berserker, they just kind of turned him loose. He wasn't quite an interesting character, but when Frank Miller and Chris Claremont did that 4-issue run in '81, which they kind of turned Wolverine into sort of Dirty Harry crossed with a little bit of a Canadian James Bond. He was, Canadian Special Forces and in Japan, and he was sort of this anti-hero, and they really wrote him very much like that first Dirty Harry film. That's when I just fell in love with the character. I just thought, wow, this is amazing. And if I have to, I'll buy some X-Men just to see this guy some more, you know?
Did you, and again, this is off topic, and in just a second, I think we should kind of talk about Black Tide Rising a little bit, as a good transition point. But before we take the hormones and transition, did you guys like, did you guys like Logan? The movie Logan.
Chuck?
Not an X-Men fan.
Yeah.
I watched it. My son said, this is a good one. You might like it. I didn't.
Oh, man. See,
I liked it.
I thought it was I thought it was one of the better Marvel movies that they've made.
It's James Mangold. He's a tremendously talented guy. He's the guy that did Ford versus Ferrari, which is another great film.
Sure. I didn't watch that. I need to.
Good movie.
Yeah, it's a
big time throwback. That's like a movie that should have been made in the 80s or the 90s, and he was able to get it made. It's about men, masculine men, driving really fast cars with gasoline powered engines that destroy the environment. And it's also
triggered.
It's also got a father-son story, which is also very,
God.
And it's got a traditional woman who's a wife.
Wait, was the father-son story the father leaving and never paying child support again? Because that's the only father-son story I've heard of anymore.
Like I said, this is a throwback. So, and it also took place in the late 60s. So
he got in his Ferrari to go buy cigarettes and never came back. No, I love that. I love what I've been doing lately on Twitch is I watch movies, and we get to do these watch parties, and I love watching 80s, late 70s, through the early 90s movies, because they are, they're, adrenaline filled. There's actual like masculine values. It's okay to be a guy. Like, it's okay to be Tom Cruise smiling gaily at Val Kilmer, but because you're flying a giant $14 million plane that goes Mach 2 and shoots down Russians, and that's awesome. And I just love that, and I hate that now all of the movies I see have forgotten that aspect of just entertaining us a little bit along with everything, because now it's like when someone, if you shoot down a Russian in a plane today, and they're doing a Top Gun sequel, called Maverick, so I'm kind of curious how they're going to handle anything like this. There would have to be like a backstory to the Russian, and we'd have to feel bad about him dying. It's like, why do we have to engage? And that's where I think Marvel on Endgame was going, was kind of getting really out there, is they're trying to make everything so impactful. And while I can appreciate what they were doing with the emotional ties on the screen, at the same time, it's like you're trying to make this comic book so important that you forgot that it's still a movie that I'm supposed to just go and watch some people throw giant hammers and lightning bolts around. That's what happened there. Yeah.
The trope I'm sick of is that when you do have a male character, a male hero, he has to have something he did in his past that he has to redeem himself for. So he's got this tragic, like, post-traumatic stress disorder moment that we have to keep being reminded of, you know, where he failed or, you know, betrayed someone. I'm sick of it. I grew up on, you know, John Wayne movies where John Wayne didn't have to explain himself. You just found out in the first 5 minutes of the film that John Wayne was a badass, and that's all you needed to know. And he was on the side of good, and that's all you needed to know. And then they had an actual story that he was part of, instead of this theme of redemption or what do we learn from the story. I don't want to learn anything from stories. I just want to watch them and enjoy them.
Yeah,
it's like Fistful of Dollars. You know, what's Clint Eastwood's motivation? He's a badass. He's a son of a bitch. Well, what makes him do the right thing? And when he's asked that, he just says, there was a woman once. And that's all you needed to know. You didn't. Everyone understood what he meant.
Have you seen? Have you seen Bone Tomahawk?
Oh yeah. Chuck and I are huge S. Craig Zahler fans.
Love that guy's stuff.
Yeah.
I was that's what that movie reminds me of, especially what's his name, Gruder or whatever, the funniest character.
Yeah, he's great.
He's like, where he's setting up the things that, like, why should we trust you? He's like, guys, I'm smarter than all of you. Well, how do you know that? Because you're all married.
You're all married. Yeah. That's when I was like, this is my guy, and I hope to Christ that he doesn't get killed. You know,
well,
it's an S. Craig Zahler film, so you know nothing is off limits.
Everybody's ass is up for grabs in his movies.
Yeah, and it was, but that was great, and it's the same thing, and I noticed the same thing in the Escape from New York, Escape from LA movies. Snake Plissken, like, he's got a backstory. I guess you can read about it in comics and stuff, but most of the people who were watching the movie, I don't think really went to research the history of Snake Plissken. They just have these little drop-ins here and there, where. In Escape from LA, it pops up where something went wrong, I think, in like Baltimore or whatever, and you figure that's it, and you never know what it was, but there was just something that went wrong. And Snake Plissken's
from New York, it was the Moscow mission. They mentioned the Moscow, and it makes you go, I want to see that story.
Exactly.
Well, it's very similar with Jack Burton in Big Trouble in Little China. Another one of my favorite John Carpenter movies that I saw probably 4 times in the theater with my dad.
One of the best movies ever made, hands down.
You get little hints here and there about Jack's past, and then obviously he's yakking on the CB, talking about probably some stuff that's a little exaggerated, but you love that character in your bones within the first 5 minutes of that movie.
Yeah, and any explanation. That's what I like about it.
None.
You know, there's no explanation of who this guy is. You find out who he is by what he does, and that's to me is the best way to characterize anybody, is by what they do, because isn't that the most important thing?
The Superman 78 Richard Donner film, he didn't redeem himself. He became Superman. I mean, he discovered his past, and through the crystal, and he accepted the task or the mission. And I really miss that about that character, and that's one thing I think Zach missed on Man of Steel is I don't need necessarily a Superman that was traumatized as a child because his super hearing hurt his ears. I just want to see Superman. I want to see an unabashed, heroic hero, and I want to see truth, justice, and the American way.
Oh,
which is that line still gives me chills when I watch it from the first Superman when he's talking to Lois and she says, what are you doing here? Why are you here? And he just says he just plays it completely straight. This is the magic of Richard Donner. Who's one of the best directors of the last 40 years. He just says it straight. I stand for truth, justice, and the American way. And Lois laughs. She cynically laughs. You're going to have every politician in America going after you. And he just says, I never lie. And it
nails it.
And that's it. And that's it. He just nails it, dude. And you never waver. You completely believe. And that was the Richard Donner said that the mission statement for Superman the movie was the word verisimilitude, which is believability. We can't play this campy. We can't play this anything other than straight. And again, the tag of the movie was, you will believe a man can fly. And in that, you also believed that that's Superman. I mean, that's the iconic, character encapsulated. I don't think anybody's ever really surpassed that film. Nolan used it as a template for Batman Begins. He went back and watched Superman the movie multiple times. And I get that out of Batman Begins.
Who wrote that log line? Because like it hit me a second after you said it how much better it was than I thought it was when you first said it. You will believe a man can fly. It's great. Any idea what person came up with that line? Because it's beautiful.
It's who knows. It was probably the marketing department, and Donner probably chose it. He probably had they probably gave him a list of tags, and he said that one.
Because that's fantastic, and it is a separation from kind of the comic book shows and stuff that were going on. Obviously, you had the Batman show, which was real goofy. The initial Captain America show is really goofy, kind of as well. And then to come out with a movie, and I think that's what DC has been trying to do and just failing at it, because their way to do that is to like, well, we'll make it dark and gritty. It's like, but that's just another form of camp, is dark and gritty.
Yeah. Well, it kind of taps in.
The secret is being earnest. You have to be earnest about it. You have to believe in it and make the readers believe in it as well. And you have to be, serious, but allow, humor into it as well. I mean, the basis of almost every DC character is they're kind of goofy.
Yeah.
So sometimes you have to lean into that, but you have to do it in an earnest and honest way. Not satire, not cynical, not tongue in cheek, but just go at it. And the material itself. I mean, Superman's a great character, but they rarely trust that character.
Right.
Just on its own. He's a Boy Scout. He's a paragon. He's an ideal of what a man should be. Just lean into that. And who wouldn't love that?
I think they're intimidated.
Most people would love it.
I think they're intimidated, and I'll tell you why I think they're intimidated by having the perfect character, right? The unstoppable Superman is and I'll do this through my own experience. And when I was in undergrad, I was going to be a writer, was my idea. And then I realized that wasn't going to work because I had a family in the Midwest. And it was going to be really tough for me to like move out to LA and write that wasn't going to work for me. Not that you have to do it that way, but that's just kind of how it was. But my writing professor, who I really did like, was from Mississippi, and she had this sort of method of the story arc. And I think it's because everybody read Robert McKee's story book, but it was forgive me the accent, but she said they have to try and fail, but fail valiantly, and then rise up from the ashes and succeed gloriously. And that's kind of how modern writers, I think, are being taught, is that there always has to be like this grand failure, and then they have to come up and redeem the failure, redeem themselves, and overcome in the end. And you'll notice that in modern story arcs, it's this like rising action early on, because we have to get into movies right away now. You've got to be hooking people in 10 minutes. You go back to the 70s and 80s, and you'll have 45 minutes of a slow rise. But now it's 10 minutes in, they're rising up, they're getting destroyed by their own hubris or whatever, or the demons of their past, and then they have to work through that or not. And give me just a second. Okay. YouTube was glitching out for a second. I hate YouTube so much sometimes, but we're back now. But yeah, that's like the way every single story arc goes. And I think that's the way that writers are being taught as they're in these schools with professors who maybe have published one book, possibly, but their career as a writer was them being a professor of writing.
Well, this is this power of myth shit. This stuff that Joseph Campbell foisted upon anybody who wants to write. And I advise everybody who wants to be a writer to ignore that. Just tell your story the way you want to tell it. And that's why TV movies so often are free of any kind of surprise, because they're all going from the same template. They're all going literally from the same computer program, telling them, well, you need a sex scene here.
Right.
And here's the scene where the hero refuses the mission. How many times have we seen the hero refuse? I don't want to see the hero refuse the mission. There's a scene in Rolling Thunder, which is a bloody revenge film with William Devane and Tommy Lee Jones from the 80s. And, William Devane is a POW coming back from Vietnam. His wife is murdered and raped. His arm is taken. His arm is shoved in a garbage disposal.
Oh, God.
Replaced with a hook. And then all he wants to do is find the guys who did it. And he goes to Tommy Lee Jones, who was in the next cell at the Hanoi Hilton from him.
Sure.
And Tommy Lee Jones has his life worked out. He's married. He's got a job and everything else. And William Devane comes to him and says, basically, I want you to go to Mexico with me and help me kill these guys. And Tommy Lee Jones listens to him tell the story and then says, when do we leave?
Yeah.
Like, yes. Yes. We don't have 15 minutes of, well, I can't go with you because I got to take care of my wife. And then 15 minutes later, he shows up at the bus terminal. I changed my mind. It's like,
yeah.
Now that's
what we get all the time now.
That's like the Wild Bunch, where Bill Holden walks in and he looks at all the guys and he says, let's go. And then Warren Oates looks at him and says, why not? And then all of a sudden they do that classic walk, and
even before he says let's go, he shares a look with the other three.
Yes.
And there's an understanding without any words passing between them that, yeah, we're going to go get these bastards.
Yep.
Well, yeah, and you think about it in real life from every context that you hear is, are you going to refuse to go to the grocery store? Are you going to fail to make it to the store and then overcome? you're thinking, no, you're going to just go to the store and get your stuff and go home. That's the story. There isn't always this 3-prong arc. And then you could take it from that silly mundane example all the way up to the guy, since it's 9/11, I guess we should talk about the guys on United 93, right? They're sitting there. And the guy gets I need to know, did they crash a plane into the building? And they find out that, yes, that happened. And then wasn't it just let's go was the last thing?
They got a plan. They basically huddled together, Todd Beamer and a bunch of other guys. And they said, okay, they got box cutters. They've got this, they got that. They wrapped their arms with the padding from the seats, and they got the drink tray. They used that as a battering ram. Try and get into the cockpit. When you talk to military guys and spec ops guys, and Chuck's good friends with some of them, I'm good friends with some of them. When they're going out on an op, there's none of this introspection. There is the planning, and there is the anticipation that the plan is basically going to go haywire once, with which all plans do with first contact of the enemy. But these guys just execute.
Yeah,
they just execute, and I miss that in my heroes. You see it more in Westerns really than anything else, where, the man from nowhere comes into town to solve a problem, and there's really no justification. It's just there's some wrongdoing going on, and the hero comes in and vanquishes it and then leaves because he's no longer needed after that.
Well, the beauty of the Western is it's a story in which you build up conflict and resolve it through violence at the very end. And every Western is the same, but every Western is different because there are nuances. How do you get there? Is the guy on the right side of the equation? There's all kinds of ways to play a Western. And, you can't mess with that formula, to any degree, or it's just a historical drama. It's not a Western anymore. But you want to see the heroes set in motion. And the thing is, this is all lazy writing because you want to create conflicts for the characters that are realistic and rising. And that's what I miss in a lot of this stuff. There's no rising level of threat. You watch a Hitchcock film and shit just gets worse and worse and worse until it's resolved. And I don't see that. I see so many movies where the best action scene is at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then the rest is all, well, when are they going to do that better? No,
Yeah,
they don't.
the villains these days just suck, and the villain and the hero are dependent on one another. They're almost mirrors, but
Right.
one doesn't want to allow what's happening to them to happen to the rest of the world, and the other one wants to inflict his pain on everybody. But I think that unless you have a really good villain, it's hard for the hero to, I think, be effective in a lot of ways. John Milius talks about this too. He talks about how Hollywood is full of broken writers, and he even said that 3-act thing. He said that's a bunch of bullshit. He said throw that. He said just dismiss that altogether. He said I have never sat down. This is a guy that wrote Apocalypse Now, Red Dawn, Conan the Barbarian, The Wind and the Lion, some of the most iconic films that I grew up with. I think he's the greatest writer in movies. I often call Chuck the John Milius of comics because he is. But honestly, man, I mean, this guy,
okay. No, I'm just kidding.
This guy just said all this stuff about 3-part acts and the hero has to overcome. It's all a bunch of happy horse shit. I just sit down with a legal pad and he writes all of his scripts out longhand. It's like Chuck was saying, tell your story,
right?
And don't worry about the rest.
Yeah, I mean, I took the McKee course because DC Comics insisted that all of its writers take it, and they paid for it. They paid for the hotel. They paid for me to take the course. And when I got back to DC afterwards, Denny O'Neil, the Batman editor, he said, "So what'd you get out of it?" I said, "Well, there was some good stuff and some stuff I can use." And he articulated a lot of things I've never really put into words. I said, but the 3-act thing, I don't get it, and I don't think I ever will. And then he said, "Don't worry about it. You do it naturally."
You know what the best thing I think from the McKee course actually was that movie adaptation.
I was just gonna say that.
So
Brian
good.
Cox is that's the only reason to really bring up Bob McKee, frankly, and just watch that scene.
How perfect was he as Bob McKee? I mean, he just recreated that experience of abuse.
Yeah.
It's funny. Milius said, I don't know if Milius was taught by McKee at USC or someone similar, but he talks about a guy at USC when he was there with Lucas and De Palma, all those guys. They called them the USC Mafia. All those directors that came and cinematographers that came out of USC in the 70s and then went on to make all those great films of the late 70s and 80s. But he said there was a guy there who would really light into you. Or he would either light into you or he would make fun of you. And if you're sitting there reading something to him and he got bored, he would say, "You know what? I'm going to make a phone call and go play tennis." And then he'd get up and leave.
That reminds me of a guy I met. His name was Sidney Iwanta. And he was a guy who would approve the scripts of all family programming in the mid 80s. So Transformers, My Little Ponies, the old ones and stuff like that. And he did that for a bunch of the networks as a consultant. He came and talked to our class, and we had to write in my screenwriting class. We had to write an actual screenplay, and then he would read them. And it was on everybody's. It was stopped on page 10. This is trash. You are great.
And that's sorely missed in the industry. You need people like that to call out crap. Otherwise, we're very much in a cultural dark ages right now within the arts. And it all boils down to one thing, and that is the soft bigotry of low expectations.
Oh, one of my favorite expressions.
Yeah, it's a Bushism.
But because of the power of myth, because of these templates and tropes, producers, the money people, now think they understand story. And that's the biggest problem you're facing. If writers were in charge of things, we'd be okay. But it's these nitwits who have cash, who think they know how movies are made.
Yeah,
that's the problem.
Yeah, you can find the hands of dumb executives who think they know how to do a story all over bad movies. I mean, when you see one of my favorite examples was Gothica with Halle Berry, which starts off okay as this kind of good horror movie and then turns into garbage halfway through. And they basically the writer was mid rewrite on the movie, and they said, "Oh, we got Halle Berry for 21 days of filming, so we're going to production." It's I'm not done. And the exec comes in and, just lines out some of the stuff in the second half of the script. And you could just see it happen. It's like, okay, if you want a good example of executive meddling and not letting the writers actually do their work, there's one for you.
Well, you can see it in movies, especially, third act, the hero starts acting totally unlike he's ever acted before.
Right.
Like, okay, some producer came in and said, well, we can shoot this in, Ireland for less money. And then they have to change everything.
Right. I wanted to add in one more thing, get your guys' opinion on it, just for my own benefit. Along with this sort of three act story stuff, along with the tropes that have become the staples of what people call storytelling, and specifically with heroes, I noticed something a couple years back. This is probably around 2010. And that was the idea that we weren't actually allowed to have heroes anymore. And I mean, even in real life. And I think the big trigger for me was Tiger Woods. Because Tiger Woods was moving culture by his... he's coming into golf, he's dominating, he's this force, he's bringing a whole bunch of people and a whole bunch of interesting new demographics into golf. I mean, you're talking about golf becoming popular in inner city, urbanized schools and stuff like that are developing golf teams with kids who had never been exposed to the sport before. And he is moving mountains in this thing. And then his, the womanizing aspect of him gets brought out in the media, and they just ripped him apart. And from then on, I don't feel like Tiger Woods has ever actually recovered. But if you talk to people in 2009, I think, about Tiger Woods, and then you talk to him about in 2013, it's a completely different story. And you start to find that in anyone who moves culture, even on small scales. And I think of stuff, that Joe the Plumber guy during the Obama campaign, comes out and he's moving culture with some just basic kind of back to basic ideas. And then it's like immediately after, this guy, tax fraud, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, so he's a small business guy who might've screwed up on his taxes before, but now he's a mafioso. He's the worst guy on earth. But it's like anytime anyone starts to move culture, there's this frenzy to find their flaws. And I think that is being wrapped into our storytelling in that, well, if everyone has these flaws, we must find it in these characters and then make sure that's part of the story every single time. So I don't know if you guys agree with that or find anything about that, but I've just noticed that we're not allowed to have heroes in real life. And that's about the time that I saw the destruction of hero happening on screen in books as well. Everybody's an anti-hero now. They have to have a dark past. They have to like borrow enough film noir to make bad decisions in the middle of the movie, whether it's noir or not. But I didn't know if you guys had any thoughts on that.
Well, I just think that Tiger Woods, that story found a way to disappoint everybody in different ways. Women were like, oh, he wasn't faithful. And guys were like, you've got that at home and you went out for this? Yep. And you have this perfect life. And I just love the fact that she attacked him with a golf club and got it. But the thing is, he's redeemed himself. He's playing killer golf now, and I'm happy for the guy. I'm in his corner, because he's back doing what he does well.
Right.
So, and then the plumber thing. Remember, the big controversy was, well, he's not really a plumber, and it's like, you dummies. It's not Joe the plumber. It's what Obama said to him.
Right. Yeah.
It doesn't matter what his freaking name is or his profession is. It's what our communist president said to it.
Exactly.
The thing that I would comment on that is, something that's sorely lacking in culture these days is forgiveness. And,
yes.
I can go back to Roseanne and I can say with utmost certainty that had that happened in the 80s or the 90s, Roseanne, what she said about Valerie Jarrett, which I thought was funny. And I, like Roseanne, I did not know Valerie Jarrett was black. I had no idea.
Yeah.
So, but if it was the 80s or the 90s and that happened, and Roseanne did have quite a show back then. You know, it was quite a juggernaut. She would have gone on an apology tour for a couple weeks. She would have hit all the morning shows and said, "I'm sorry, and I was wrong, and please forgive me." You know, along those lines.
Right.
And
I think more likely people would have just said, "That's Roseanne."
Well, that too, but
that's
that's the culture from that era. They would have said that. They would have said, "Well,
okay." Kind of stuff she says, that's her humor. You know, I mean, nobody would have cared.
Well, and back then, comedians were paid to push the edge, push the envelope, and dance gracefully along that edge. That's what we expected out of them. So,
or not so gracefully. I mean, Howard Stern's entire career was, based on, racial stereotype humor, and single entendre sexual humor. So,
right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And now it's like we want our comedians to not make us laugh or be uncomfortable. Like we don't want either one.
And if they do, they lynch them. I mean, they destroy them. They destroy their career. Look what they did to Roseanne. They canceled the show. They put 250 people who work on that show on the street. And then she jumps in and says, hey, I'll give you the rights so you can hire everybody back and you can just do it without me. And when I heard that, I was like, yeah, right. They're never going to do that. Who the fuck's going to watch that show without Roseanne? It's going to suck. And they did it. You know, I mean, that was
they
the
actually
thing.
did that?
Yeah, the Connors. It's called the Connors now. And they killed her off the show. I'm not joking. They made the character die.
I've never heard of it. That's fantastic.
Here's a great idea for a sitcom. First, the mom dies.
let's just ramp the funny up.
Well, she was doing. Well, the thing about it was, what was fascinating about that show was that what she was doing huge numbers with that show. Yeah. I mean, it was what was the first episode, like 50 or 60 million people tuned into that. These are numbers that you just don't get anymore. But what she was doing, at the time that show was debuting, I was watching old episodes of Family Ties on Amazon Prime, which was a show that my family watched every night. You know, I mean, we never missed that show. We would watch it as a family, as you did back in the 80s and the 90s, because you usually had 1 or 2 TVs. Right. One was in the family room where you all gathered. It was, kind of the hearth of the house. So, but what Roseanne was doing was something very similar to what Family Ties, the dynamic. You had the 2 hippie parents, and then you had Michael J. Fox, who was the conservative, the Alex P. Keaton character. So they would clash, and they would have their issues, but at the end of the episode, they still loved each other, and they were still close, and they still respected each other, and it was still family, and that's what Roseanne was doing. She was introducing her character that was pro-Trump, and then you had the sister who was anti-Trump, and the kids were kind of somewhere in the middle, and they'd go at it and they'd clash, and then they would, but at the end of the day, we're family. We love each other and we respect each other.
Oh yeah, that show can't be on the air. No.
Well, that's something, but she, I think that what she was doing was really, in a way, pushing the culture in that direction of forgiveness. And it's okay. Okay. This stuff is not life or death. We do this every 2 to 4 years. You don't like the guy, vote him out. But it doesn't mean that you have to destroy friendships and destroy families and unfriend people and blacklist people and destroy their careers and keep them from earning a living. That's what the left does, not the right.
Yeah. And that's the thing that kills me is it's no longer about just disagreeing. Now it's you have to devastate whoever it is. Like they have to be gone. They have to be dead, basically. That's
and you erase their existence. ABC, they took Roseanne's old shows off the app. You can't even watch them anymore. You have to buy them.
Yeah.
So they've erased her from history, which is what communists do. They erase you from history. Well, after they send you to the gulag.
Closer to home, when I was on the outs with DC, it was basically blacklisted. They had to keep reprinting my material because it sold, but they would never put my name on the cover. But now that regime at DC has changed, and now all of a sudden I'm getting hardcover and paperback collections. They've got my name on the cover again. But they wanted to erase my existence as much as possible, but they still wanted the money they could make.
Right. And I think this is a good time to actually talk about kind of blacklisting and what that's led to for you guys. And if you'll permit me, I'd like to share the Indiegogo campaign that you guys have going for Black Tide Rising, because and we can kind of transition into talking about that, how blacklisting and stuff has led to this and what it is. But I want to pull it up on screen so people can actually see it. You guys won't see it, but I'll tell you in just a second when it's actually up. Right now, it's over part of the chat, but here we have Black Tide Rising, the graphic novel, which you guys are working on. So can you talk a little bit about how you went from writing, Marvel and DC, and Brett, how you went from coloring these major properties as well to independent creation, and what that kind of like has done for you, I guess. Like, how did you get there? And then what does it mean to be there? If that makes sense.
Yeah, go ahead, Chuck.
No, go ahead.
Oh, for me, it was Clinton Cash. That was the first project where I kind of stepped outside of just being a colorist and actually packaged a whole book. And like I said, Chuck was the first call I made. I knew he had already adapted Amity Schleye's Forgotten Man graphic novel, which went #1 on the New York Times bestseller list, and that was about the Great Depression. So I figured, well, I know this guy's been blacklisted from Marvel and DC, and he's going to be fearless. He's not going to care. And I remember the first phone call, like it was yesterday, because I pitched it to him, and he was interested. He said that could make a cool comic, He said, let me buy a copy and I'll read it, But that's kind of where it started for me, where I showed myself that I could assemble a team, I could create a book within a certain time frame, and it could be successful. And that was actually privately funded. That was not any kind of a crowd fund. Somebody cut a check for that, and cut a pretty big check, because that was my stipulation to Steve Bannon and Peter Schweizer when they approached me. Basically, they came to me and they said, "We have the graphic rights." I said, "Great. What do you want to do with it?" They're like, "We don't know. That's why we're hiring you. You go figure that out." They had no direction whatsoever. So it really was attractive from the sense of, and I told Chuck this at the time, I said, I think we're going to have pretty much creative freedom on this. We're going to be able to just run around like wild Indians and do whatever we want. And that's largely how it worked. I'd say we got about 98% of everything we wanted in that book. But that proved to me that I could do this, and it wasn't quite as complex as I thought. Although, I learned a lot on that book, and then that led me into, working on projects like Jawbreakers and Trump Space Force. I did this book with my buddy Timothy Lim right after Clinton Cash, called Thump, The First 100 Days, which is a retelling of the 2016 election with Donald Trump cast as a cute, lovable, fluffy bunny named Thump. This went number one on Amazon. It was just kind of like, that world that I left behind working on these characters that I didn't have any ownership in. I can now work on books that I do have a stake in, and it can be more than just a page rate. We can make royalties. We can own these properties. There's a future here that I did not have at Marvel and DC. And thankfully I was able to team up with some pretty talented guys, and I've been really blessed to work with Chuck and Sergio and Graham and Tim and all these guys. But had Clinton Cash not come into my life and I chose to make that decision to do that book, I wouldn't be sitting here.
Sure. And I guess the big question though is, so you mentioned once you did Clinton Cash that you were done at Marvel and DC.
The editors that I used to work with on a pretty regular basis, the emails and the phone calls stopped. And when I would reach out to them for work, I wouldn't get any, there was none of this, "You'll never work in this town again." It was never like that. It was just, they just go dark.
Yeah.
They just ghost you and it's over with. And I knew that was a risk. I knew that was a risk going in, but it was worth the risk, because it was such a it's just one of those. It's just one once in a lifetime kind of project that rolls around, and it's a defining moment. So the moment can define you, or you can define the moment. And
Sure.
I decided to define the moment myself and do it.
How about you, Chuck? What got you off of the methadone drip of Marvel and DC?
Well, I was working a lot at DC, and most of my work was for Denny O'Neil, the Batman group editor. And Denny O'Neil's famously the biggest bleeding heart liberal ever to work in comics. And
that's an accomplishment.
Yeah, he would often, put politics, and this is early 70s, he was putting politics into stories, making the stories quote unquote relevant. And they got a lot of media at DC for that, but nobody bought the comics, so they had to cancel them. But the thing is, he was my group editor. It became quickly apparent that we were on opposite sides of the political spectrum. And we would have these bat retreats where we would go away for 3-4 days at a time and plan out Batman continuity. And we had epic political battles there. Denny, Doug Mensch, Alan Grant, myself, the Batman assistant editors. And I was always the lone conservative. I was the guy saying, global warming is a bunch of crap. And, I once said the Vietnam War was justified. And I thought they were all going to have heart attacks.
Oh, my God. How dare you?
So, but the thing is, when we were done arguing, we went to dinner.
Yeah.
And we went to lunch, and then we went back to work, and nothing was said. And Denny gave me tons of work while I was there. Now, the day he retired, it all changed. They brought in an indifferent, politically correct group editor, and I couldn't get anywhere. I mean, I was still selling well for DC, but my pitches weren't going anywhere, new ideas. I mean, I just was basically that the idea wasn't welcome. And then I left to go to another company. And in that time, I basically got blacklisted at DC and Marvel. Marvel, in no uncertain terms, the Marvel head editor said I would never work for Marvel again because of my politics. And these are private politics. I'm not putting politics into the work. These are just my own private beliefs. And I wasn't alone. There were other guys who were bounced out of the business, never to come back again. But I was like the first. I mean, they talk about Comicsgate. I always say I'm the Jesus of Comicsgate because I sacrificed for all of you. I was the first one, to go into the wood chipper.
Yeah, when are you coming back, though? No, I'm just kidding.
No, I get that too. When did it's like, when did Comicsgate start for you? Before those two words were ever combined. Before that word was ever a pejorative used against conservative creators, and that's Clinton Cash. It happened way before Comicsgate ever existed. So, Yeah,
but I ended up. I mean, they basically tried to take away my livelihood. But I'm stubborn. I wouldn't go away.
Yeah, it's amazing when you don't lay down and die like they ask you to, or like they demand you to do. And did you or do you get a backlash still from people who the way I phrase it is, they don't just want you off of a thing, they want you off of everything. And the other day, that Nick Sandman kid or whatever, he got accepted to Transylvania University in Kentucky, and there was one of the local ACLU chapters, the head of that, he went on a tear on it on Twitter, like, how dare
ACLU, the ACLU.
Yeah, how dare they let this kid go to college? And then one of the professors at the college freaks out as well, and it's like. And they're just so appalled that this kid should ever. It's like, well, what do you want? He's 18 years old. He's got to figure out. He's either going to go to college, or he's going to go to trade school, or he's going to start a career. And you have to, at some point, he's got to make money to live. But they don't want that. It's an unacceptable outcome that someone isn't just dead in a gutter.
Well, I get interviewed, like I did an interview on NPR, I did an interview for Rolling Stone, I did an interview with some other left-wing website, and these are recent. And their approach to me now is because of my associations about who I'm working with. And they go, we were such big fans of you, and now we're so disappointed because you're working with this person or that person. and they're just a horrible, awful, right-wing, fascistic, whatever they want to paint them to be. And I'm like, well, that's great, but are you trying to get me work anywhere else? I mean, so I'll stop working for those people, and what do? Go to Home Depot, get a job as a greeter? I mean,
they'd rather you just overdose on fentanyl.
Yeah, yes. I think what you'll find is if you went to Home Depot to work as a greeter, what they'd do is they'd get an interview with the CEO of Home Depot and be like, "We're just
this guy worked with Steve Bannon. We can't have him greet people at Home Depot."
Look, we used to like you, Home Depot. We bought your light fixtures, but now we're just really disappointed in this Chuck Dixon guy, the greeter at store number 4621. Yeah, it's really but that's how it is, right? You can't, once you're gone, like you are stubbornly holding on to life in the eyes of these people. And it's funny because for some guys, and I assume, for you guys and for some people we probably mutually know, that stubbornly holding on to life can be a very, very successful, even much more successful career than they had beforehand. And I think of guys like Doug TenNapel, Ethan Van Sciver, who have gone independent, who have shown that they can consistently make very good livings selling very popular books without the apparatus of these studios to navigate through, and probably make more money doing so. But
absolutely.
But you find that the people who wanted them gone from those places now will, inexplicably to me, because I'm the laziest, angry person on the planet. I will never call up a business and be like, you know what you need to do. You can't work with this person. That is the worst phone call I can imagine.
I can't even imagine making that phone call. It's like the way I would process it is find another business to frequent if you don't like what that. I mean, I'm doing that right now. I used to go to Sprouts for my produce and my meat. I can't walk in there without a damn mask on, and I have a medical exemption. Plus, I don't want to wear a mask. I'm perfectly fine rolling the dice with a fucking virus that has a 99.98% recovery rate. So, look at me running with scissors too, right? I'm a big risk taker.
I am so sorry. My audience, I have to apologize. No, I'm going to step over you here, Brett. I am so sorry to my audience.
You're going to get picked right off YouTube, Brett.
Look, Brett.
I said it. Oh, shit.
With the links to COVID and obesity, I now have found out that Brett Smith is trying to kill every SJW on the planet. No.
Oh, that mea culpa.
He's trying to.
I'll admit to that.
He's trying to COVID all the oversized blue hairs he can find.
Well, can I also mention that if there are any Democrats that are watching, you're going to vote on the 4th. On the 4th. Take a note.
No, but yeah, that's always my answer. Is if I don't like something, I just don't buy it. But I don't generally hold the company responsible for their evil in making the thing. I don't target the stores that sell it on behalf of the
you don't break their windows and burn their store down to nothing.
No, I can't imagine leaving my house for anything that isn't just providing something for me to do, like getting ham for a sandwich or whatever. I can't imagine going out roving the streets angry enough. That's so much work.
Those people need to hit the gym so bad. And then when you look at them, you're like, yeah, they really do need to hit the gym, but they need something to do.
They don't have a job.
None.
Yeah, and I think COVID's making it worse, because I think the few people who, the few protest style people who do really have jobs are not at them, and it's giving them more time. And I think it's also attracting people to as a social activity movement that they can oh, I can go outside if I'm here. Well, of course, there's probably beer in those Molotov cocktails or whatever. I can pound a few of those and have a good time. There's a social element to all of it that is, I think it's magnifying things, but it's a mess.
The thing I've noticed, there's a similarity between all of these demonstrations, protests, riots, whatever you want to call them, confrontations with the police. And there's one aspect in every single video I see. There's always a kid on a bike just sort of idly riding around the video. What is that about?
Yeah,
why does that happen every single time?
The crazy ones up in Seattle or whatever, where they had the Chaz and they had the shooting like in the middle of the night. You know, this car like crashes into a barrier and there's a bunch of gunshots going off and you see some guy like huffing it on a bike. I'm like, it's 2 a.m. What are you doing on the bike? It's like, I don't understand these lives at all.
I can guarantee you that's not a paper route.
No. But okay, I've got to read a couple of chats that came in a while ago. I like to kind of warm up and get to know my guests, especially the first time before I jump into chats. I got to read a couple of those, and then I want to explore the Black Tide Rising Indiegogo, which has been up this for quite a while. But I want to kind of go through it with you guys and talk about the different levels that are there. Talk about what's in the the art that you guys have displayed and stuff like that, and kind of give people an idea of the book.
It's funny too, because I started working on this probably a year ago with Black Tide Rising, and I had no idea that it would hit during a pandemic. And we've got basically a zombie apocalypse graphic novel here that is like a fever. It's a virus, so it's just the parallels are so bizarre. But good, I suppose. It's like the two things that out of COVID, that were positive. It got me out of jury duty. And it's making my Indiegogo relevant because it's reflecting real life.
Perfect. Well, the best thing for me is nobody expects me to be anywhere. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah, that has actually been very nice. Although it means I have to be like more active in taking my kids places, which is because my kids still have to be places. I don't understand that. It's like, oh, we got to go to violin lessons. It's like I can't go. But okay, so a couple chats, and then we'll jump into the Black Tide Rising, and then I'll do some more. But Bad Vibes is entertainment. You mean like Netflix investigation? Well, apparently in 2018, Netflix had an investigation over a project called Desire for certain portrayals. The C and the P there were in quotes. I don't know what that means. Google Netflix investigation Desire to decide for yourself. I know nothing about that. I think it's in reference to Netflix's newest political move or PR move, which was to promote cuties as a horrifically sexualized depiction of minors. That seemed like a good plan, I think. Michael Tynan says, Nick, remember one of the immutable laws of nature's always be grifting. Yes. Always be grifting. ABG. You guys don't know this probably, but I just won the World Grifter Championship. I beat Anita Sarkeesian, and then Dick Masterson, and then Ethan Ralph. So I am the king grifter of the internet.
What an honor!
It was a long road, but I'm happy to be here. The gardening snail of Livingston, California sent, "Hail Rekieta, may the farce be with you. Recently, the ALDF sued Foster Farms. I did a video from a resident's perspective. I was wondering if you'd be interested in unleashing your unique snark and awe on the complaint." Yeah, gardening snail, send me an email. I'd love to take a look at it. Okay, that being said, sorry for the delay on that, guys, but I was enjoying talking to my guests. We have this Indiegogo campaign, Black Tide Rising Volume 1. And why don't you guys, you've talked about it's a zombie apocalypse caused by a virus. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Can you give us just kind of like, is there more of a synopsis in that? I know there's a family involved. Mm-hmm. Why should we care about them? What's their dark past that they have to overcome? I kid.
Let the writer explain their dark past.
Yeah, there really isn't one.
No. Thankfully so.
Yeah.
Wait, so it's not a family who like murdered a group of immigrants in a van back in 1967 that is constantly trying to hide that fact, or they didn't run over like a homeless child 6 weeks ago and like throw their car into the river next to Ted Kennedy's car or anything?
I don't think they even have
any of their soccer games.
I don't even think they have Guatemalans do their lawn. I think they make the teenage girls do their lawn.
Oh my goodness, how dare you? You got to have the Guatemalan. What else would they? No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, what's the story? Basically, and why should we care about these characters? And why should we buy the book?
Well, I think the greatest thing about these characters is the classic, what are they going to do next? You know, as things all go to hell in the world. It's like a thinking man's zombie, adventure story.
Sure.
These characters are problem solvers. They're not a bunch of boobs who are going to run around being panicked, at the beginning of the story. As soon as they get an understanding of what's going on in the world, they act. And that's one of the coolest things that John Ringo built into this story was they react in a very specific, military-minded way to basically not only survive but to help others. And the science of it, I usually don't like it in zombie stories where they explain the zombie, phenomenon. But John does such a compelling job of explaining the science on like a Michael Crichton level. That's
Sure.
interesting. It's going to be challenging to turn into a comic book, but it's really compelling in the prose.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
it's based on a national best-selling book series called Black Tide Rising, written by John Ringo and Mike Massa, and who are both ex-military guys. And we're dealing with a military family. The two main characters is Faith and Sophia. They're both teenage girls, and then you've got the dad, the mom, and they're a military family. The girls are competent. They're all competent. They're all trained. They all love firearms. They can, they can shoot. They all work on their dad's security team, and that's the thing that drew me to the project when the two gentlemen, Mike Lerman, approached me about it. They said, we've got the license to this, and we want to turn it into a graphic novel, and it's this already best-selling book series, so we think it can do really well in this new medium, in this new format. And also, we'd love to see this go to live action. And obviously, right now, graphic novels are probably the easiest path to go to live action, because you've got a book of high-end storyboards to present to producers, and producers are not visual people. They're not, like we talked about earlier, they're not writers, they're not visual people, they're money people. And
Right.
and unless you give them something to to show them what you want to do, they don't understand. But I'm not a huge zombie apocalypse guy, and neither is Chuck, which is kind of ironic.
No, don't speak for me.
Well,
Be quiet. You be quiet, sir. No.
I wrote a zombie apocalyptic novel. I mean, I am a zombie apocalypse guy.
I don't like Walking Dead. I've never been a fan of it. I like Night of the Comet, and I know it like a couple other zombie flicks, but there you go. There you go.
Was that still in the plastic wrap, though?
Yes, it was. It just came the other day. Well, Blu-ray.
This is one of the reasons why we work together so well, is because it's just it's like a mind meld a lot of times. But what drew me to this story was the survival aspect, which I do like about some of the zombie movies, but it's always the protagonist is always unprepared and does stupid stuff. And what I liked about this was you're dealing with a military family, special forces. They're prepared and they're competent, and they understand how to navigate this the right way, and also, like Chuck was saying, help others. So it had two elements that I really liked: the competency, and then it's also a very hopeful story. And I liked the idea of cutting against the grain of the nihilism that is baked into The Walking Dead. There's a lot of nihilism, a lot of anarchy, a lot of hopelessness, which turned me off. I made it to about season 3, to the jail, and then I just said, okay, I'm out. I can't do this anymore. This show is putting me in a really bad mood. Frankly.
I've never watched an episode.
It starts out interesting. I'll give look, I'm not going to sit here and bash Robert Kirkman. I'd love to be in his position, frankly, to be able to create my own books and then go and spin them off into TV shows. So kudos to him. He caught lightning in a bottle and he ran with it. And I wish him nothing but best wishes and more success, frankly. But I think we can kind of, fill the vacuum here with a little bit different story, which, like I said, you're dealing with characters that understand how to survive, not only survive, but thrive. And, and a lot of this is, takes place on the island of Manhattan in New York. And this family is prepared, not only from standpoint to possibly bug in with a lot of supplies and guns and ammo, but they decide to bug out, which I think is pretty cool. Get the hell out and take to the sea and try and repopulate the human species, while navigating all of these infected people who are basically ravaging New York City, and just the parallels to COVID. We watched kind of the panic, the toilet paper, the run on the grocery stores. Some people in Florida obviously are used to that when a hurricane comes around, but to see it happen on a national basis, I thought was really interesting, and that a lot of that ties into the book as far as how the public reacts and how there is this new normal which is accepted. And in Manhattan, in our book, the new normal is, hey, you could be out and about in Greenwich Village, and all of a sudden, the street lights come on and it's dark, and you've got zombies roaming around who are going to feast on you.
Yeah,
kind of like it is now.
Right. I was going to say, it's interesting because the country did kind of get exposed to that idea of like a run on grocery stores early on in COVID, when suddenly, like, you couldn't get toilet paper, and that was a funny joke because it's like,
water.
How much are you pooping? But it was like, yeah, water, and then deli meat for a while, and milk. Those just like. Oof.
Well, you remember the crisis with the meat. There was a meat shortage for a couple weeks, and then Trump said, "Hey, everybody's got to get back in there and go pack that meat."
Right.
Well, not only go pack that meat, but he allowed a change in regulations so that meat being prepared for restaurants could now be repositioned for retail.
Right.
And that would have been impossible under any other president. Trust me, no other president would have figured that one out.
Yeah, and that was
the logistics.
Right. And it was right after they had ordered like the slaughter of a bunch of livestock as well.
Yeah,
which is like, why can we just eat them? Like, how about that? Instead of just burying them or whatever, can I eat them? Like, can we just set those into the queue?
Think about how crazy that is. Take all of this. Cattle are expensive, man. That's big bucks.
Oh yeah.
And that's a huge loss for ranchers. The idea of taking perfectly good cattle and slaughtering them because you can't get them to market fast enough, that's just nuts.
That's like burning all your money.
Yeah. Here's my question. They're not going to die if you don't get them to market. Like, just let them live another 6 weeks.
They eat grass, for God's sakes. What, do we run out of grass? There's a run on grass. There's no grass because of COVID.
There's another meat market coming in tomorrow. I promise you. If it's all bought out today, you're going to need more tomorrow.
The pigs they'll literally eat anything.
Right. It's
they should let the pigs eat the cows. At least it would have been for some purpose.
Exactly. Okay. So it's a capable family in a zombie apocalypse. They choose to piece out of society because they're like, okay, well, all of these morons are going to die. I'm putting this politely, or not politely, but a bunch of people are going to die. We've got to be the ones we've got to make sure somebody lives through this, is kind of the impression I'm getting. And then figure out how to go. So that's pretty cool. I like this. I think this is the cover art here that I've got pulled up on stream. I don't know if you guys are able to see. Okay, and I love the look of it. That's very.
That's Dave Dorman, who is a longtime Star Wars painter. Did a lot of stuff in the 80s and the 90s. Does quite a bit of stuff now in indie comics. I've had him. I had him paint another cover for a book Chuck and I have coming out this month called Blood. And one of the things I like about Dave is that he doesn't work digitally. He works with all traditional mediums. In fact, if you find him on Facebook, he's usually live streaming him painting. In fact, he live streamed the painting of that, and he's so much fun to watch. It's kind of like Bob Ross, but cooler. Cooler subject material.
Oh, we've got a happy little zombie, and we've got a happy little headshot over here. Just take that fan brush, and you've got the blood spray. No, sorry.
Right. No, Dave also draws the art. Unlike a lot of guys who just transfer photographs. Dave, that's all Dave. That's 100% Dave, that painting. Out of his mind. So
yeah, I just love that organic feel of traditional mediums, and it's kind of a throwback to the 80s and the 90s, and it's something that's different from sort of the Photoshop montages that you get these days. And it's just so refreshing to see. Plus, Dave is he's a legend, you know, and this is a guy that, you know, I grew up admiring his work as a fan before I was ever in the industry. So it was, it's really fun to be in my position to go out and hire him to do this stuff. You know, and it's the same with Chuck. I mean, I grew up reading his stuff, so it's, I'm the one that gets to work with all my heroes these days and tell them what to do. You know, it's pretty cool.
Okay, so let's talk about the perks. You've got buy a book for a troop.
Yeah.
How does that work? Is that you buy a book and it goes to a soldier, or is it you buy at this tier and you get a book and a soldier gets a book? How does it work?
You know, we're going to be delivering those to U.S. Army bases.
Okay.
Across the U.S. And I'm not sure if we're doing international on that or not. I think we were. But you know, then again, you know, we're lots of troops are coming home from the international, so it might not be needed. You know, we got troops coming home from Germany and Iraq and Afghanistan. It's a beautiful thing. But I was
just talking with a friend of mine about that earlier today. It's like, you know, we've gone 4 years without having more war. We're actually getting less of it, and people are coming home. Huh?
We can't do that.
What are we gonna do about that?
It's amazing how that works, isn't it?
You piece of chance. What are you, crazy?
Right.
Didn't we want to make love and not war? Wasn't that the?
No, that's back when you could question authority.
Right.
Sorry.
Okay, so you're going to be giving out books to troops. You've got the graphic novel plus the art print. Is that the cover print here that we're looking at?
Yeah. We wanted to offer that Dave's piece, and I think you can even get one where Dave signs it as well. So.
Right. So we've got 2 graphic novels and art prints, 5 books for service members is in there. You've got the basic autograph bundle, and then a deluxe autograph bundle. What's
That's the entire team. So you'll get me, you know, and we've got an all-star lineup on this as well. Obviously, we have Chuck. We have art by Durla Santa Cruz, who's a Marvel and a DC guy. He's worked on Batman, Fantastic Four. I've worked with him in the past on multiple titles at DC, and obviously Dave. So you know, you're getting top tier A-list Marvel and DC talent with this book, and the sample pages that we did turned out just beautifully. Yeah. And you know, we picked that scene in particular because we wanted to, you know, introduce the characters as well as show the zombies and show some action, and also kind of give a feel for what New York is like in this world. And a lot of it is kind of like New York is today, you know. Yeah. And that's the weird part, dude.
Roving bands of mindless homicidal maniacs.
Well, and things are shut down. You know, things are shut down. Not everything is open. There's rolling blackouts. You know, a lot of power is you know, on generator. You know, this concert that's going on is to kind of give people a feel that things are normalized. You know, and even in the midst of the concert, you've got, you know, zombies obviously attacking concert goers, and they're kind of numb to it. You know, they're kind of like, hey, you know, I haven't been bitten yet, but it'll happen at some point in time. You know,
which is bizarre. A real New York frame of mind if you know any New Yorkers. So
sure, it's like you're well, I guess it, you know, it could happen, so it will. Probably.
I mean, these days, it's not a matter of when you'll get mugged on the subway, or, you know, if it's when you'll get mugged on the subway.
Well, I mean, I used to go up to New York a lot when I worked for the major companies, and all the people that work there, that live there, would say the same thing. It's, you know, well, when I get mugged, you know, I mean, Denny O'Neil was mugged 3 times. The 3rd time, the cop said, "Why don't you get a gun?" And he goes, "Well, that's illegal." And the cop said, "Do you think we care at this point?"
Yeah, can you see Denny? Can you see Denny going full Death Wish?
I was gonna say that's like in Death Wish, you know. He's down there.
Hey, Denny was at the Cuban Missile Crisis when he was in the Navy. So
Really?
Denny,
Oh wow. Oh wow. I didn't know that. That's amazing.
yeah, he was out there sailing next to Russian trawlers and all that crap. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Man, why was that never made into a comic?
Yeah,
The Cuban Missile Crisis.
Good stuff.
let's do that.
Yeah. I agree.
Okay, so we've got then we've got a signed numbered art bundle. What's do we have any descriptions of these things? I guess I could.
Yeah. If you click on them, they expand, and it's got a it's got a fuller.
Oh,
So-
there it is. Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sorry
so
about that.
no, it's not you. It's entirely me being terrible at what I do. Graphic novel signed by the entire team, and then a signed and numbered limited edition print is on there. Then we've got the Be a Zombie cameo bundle. These are exciting.
Yes. This is fun stuff. You can be a zombie in the book, and there's a limited number of those, so we don't drive Durless crazy. But that was that was one of the ideas that we had was why not draw people's likeness into the book, and I just did that on another book that we're going to print on, and that was so I got submissions from the person with with their face and their body and different angles and whatnot. Then I ship that off to the artist, and he makes it happen in the panels. So it's pretty cool.
So you've got you could be a zombie, or there's a character cameo bundle. So that's where you get to think about things and not be a zombie, I guess, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like a walk-on role,
Sure.
It's
we're just kind of trying to think of ways, sort of pulling from cinema. You've got your walk-on roles, and then you've maybe got a speaking role where you say something like paging Mr. Herman. Mr. Herman, you have a telephone call at the front desk.
Sure.
That's a Pee-wee's Big Adventure joke.
Yeah, no.
For the millennials out there who are unfamiliar with Tim Burton's early work.
Who are unfamiliar with the Alamo's basement.
Right.
And then this is the one I'm interested in the most, is the Zombie Cannon Fodder bundle.
Right.
It's my new goal to be killed in as many comic books as possible. So,
it's an honor. That's right.
So I think you'll probably have a new backer on that one pretty soon.
Kill the grifter. Kill the grifter zombie.
I'll be the zombie just lifting money out of people's pockets as he walks around, not biting anybody. It's like, oh no, that's just a New Yorker. No, I'm kidding.
Get his boots, TC.
And you've sold out of the speaking role character already. So that's already gone. Congratulations on that. But yeah, so there's some really cool bundles in here. Some good perks. Someone was asking me if there is a perk to buy a graphic novel for you and a troop, but it doesn't look like there is. It looks like you just back both of those independently, right?
Right.
Yeah.
What you should do is buy one for you and buy 5 for the troops with the buy 5 bundle.
It's not a bad idea.
It's amazing how that works when you're just saying it. No.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, the campaign looks really cool. And guys, of course, if you recognize what these guys are doing, if you appreciate the fact that we do have the ability now to go out and not be under the thumb of Marvel and DC. And it's not really, I mean, I guess it is Marvel and DC to some respect, but it's under the thumb of just this culture. Because I mean, Marvel and DC are these entities, but entities are made up of who makes them up.
Well, I think they reflect the culture, and I think that they are right now, or at least their version of it.
Right.
Twitter culture.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
And what do you guys think? Is this stuff going to end? Is it going to get worse? Because I mean, I've already
Did you see the NFL ratings? Did you see they're down 16%, and the NBA. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw this, but they were booing at the NFL.
Yeah.
Well,
we're booing equality.
was that at the recent game, the Texans and someone else, and like the Texans didn't even come out for a while or something. Was it they didn't come out for the national anthem or something like that? I don't know the story, but I saw something brief about it.
Well, and they were preaching diversity and all inclusiveness and all of this SJW happy horse shit. I mean, I think as long as they continue down this road, and it, it's like Nike. Nike, thought that they were going to get the angst-ridden youth, out there buying sneakers if they teamed up with Colin Kaepernick, and it's gone quite the other direction. And I think that all these brands are having a real hard time. And it's like McDonald's. I mean, they did the whole, the ad with the names of all the the shooting victims, and none of this, it's almost like they do it for cover.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, we're going to take out this insurance policy so nobody comes after us.
Oh,
but
yeah.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work because nothing you do is good enough for them.
No, they're not going to be coming after you, and all you're going to do is alienate the largest part of your audience.
Right.
We're all sick of this. We're all sick of being lectured to and hectored and the rest of it.
Yeah, my decision on whether or not my 4-year-old wants chicken nuggets has nothing to do with whether or not McDonald's supported Black Lives Matter. It's entirely that I'm like, what's for lunch? And my kid's like, I want chicken nuggets. I'm like, can we get literally anything else on the planet? No, I want chicken nuggets and a crappy toy. I want it now. It's like, fine.
He wants his Happy Meal.
I just want to go to McDonald's and then go home and get in a different room than you right now. Because Nick,
it's interesting when you were talking about, watching the 80s and the 90s movies and enjoying them so much.
Yeah.
Those, the content and the entertainment back then was written for everyone. It was written for the widest swath. It was meant to be, it was meant to be pop culture in that sense that everyone was there to enjoy it. It was available for everyone to enjoy. Right. Now everybody's got to, bifurcate their audience and go after these weird niches. And it doesn't make any sense to me. So,
you certainly can't spend $200 million making a movie and expect it to be a hit with a niche market.
No. You gotta...
The audience, the customer's always right. If the audience says, we want more of this, you make more of this. They're screaming, we don't want any more of this. But they don't
are.
Listen.
But I think the real scary risk is, and this is what I see at least, and I'm guessing everybody else does too, in comics and in places like the MCU, and we see MCU and Star Wars and DC suffering, but not suffering enough at the box office for these decisions, is they'll take a property that everybody does want, and that will override the messaging that they're injecting into it. Like, everybody's gonna go see the next Avengers movie for a while, and they're gonna get they've got 80 years, or well, not 80 years on Avengers, but they've got 50 years of Avengers, or 60 or whatever it is now. Of credibility that they can burn, and that's like a big piece of solid oak to burn through, and they will eventually do it if they keep injecting garbage into it. But it's going to take a while, and they're still going to make $1 billion on the next movie and $1 billion on the next one. But it's going to be like 1.3, and then 1.25, and then 1.1. But it's always justified, and you see it in Star Wars especially, where they keep justifying these movies that are performing huge, but they're underperforming expectations. And it's people who don't understand markets and who don't understand, most importantly, how capital works. That it's not about that billion. If you were expected to make 1.5 and you come in with a 1, your stock's going down. And that's where I see these entertainment companies doing, is they're burning stock on beloved properties, and eventually everyone is going to be cynical enough to just not buy it.
Yeah, even worldwide box office on a lot of these big franchises is beginning to erode.
Right.
And the thing is that it won't happen slowly. It won't, because if you look at the history of these kind of things, when it falls fast.
Yeah.
Right.
When I was a kid, every other show on television was a Western, until all of a sudden there were no Westerns because the ratings plummeted on all of them.
Yeah, they disappeared until Open Range.
Yeah. And 3D comics. 3D comics were huge until they weren't. And overnight, they were not huge. And it ended. So these cycles can end disastrously quickly.
Well,
and they're hastening it, because Marvel is starting to throw their loser most recent creations into their movies and games, and nobody wants them.
I want MCU to do a Squirrel Girl movie.
You're the only one.
Yeah.
No, that's why I want them to do it. I want them to just show the failure.
They will.
And yeah, it's gonna be great. That's gonna be. I'll go see that. I'll pirate.
I think the future though is for film is guys like S. Craig Zoller who work on about $20 million budgets. And therefore they don't have as much risk. I mean, when you're putting $250-300 million into a movie, that's a lot of risk.
Huge.
I mean, it's like you said, if it comes in under 1.5, it doesn't break even.
Yeah, because putting $200 to $300 million into a movie budget, your marketing budget is going to equal that, and so then your return's going to have to be triple your movie budget. That's what was crazy about like The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings movies is like, oh, they're pulling in a $1 billion box office. Like, well, after marketing costs, they're putting $900 million into these movies. Right. And it's the same thing with MCU and with Disney, with whatchamacallit, Star Wars. It's like, yeah, I mean, Last Jedi might have done 1.1 billion, but the marketing cost on this is their margin is still 20%.
And that's why they're going global. They can't rely on America anymore.
Yeah.
So they're going to tailor their stories to appeal to other cultures, and that's why you see them, going after China so hard.
I hope they do a Bollywood Star Wars. Just emerging market Bollywood Star Wars.
I would like to see that. Please.
I think that'd be great. I think it'd be hilarious.
Or, the Russians make some pretty crazy movies too.
Oh my God, yes.
You know who I
Those
like?
Those guys are nuts.
I love the Korean films scene right now, because I feel like South Korea is making movies that are similar to late 80s, early 90s American movies. I like Train to Busan. I watched the other day, was really good. I Saw the Devil is really cool. And, I Saw the Devil is like a guy, his wife gets taken for trafficking, and he's just like a dock worker or whatever. But he's like walking around just beating the ever-loving shit out of whoever he comes across because his wife was taken for trafficking, and that's just what you have to do.
Right.
I'm loving their stuff right now. And I want to see more of that. And it's like, okay, if America's going to take stuff global, can we go to places where people actually like cool stories and like the fact that there are differences between genders of people, and that's okay. Like the thing I liked about Train to Busan is you have this dad who's portrayed the whole time. I mean, he's portrayed negatively as an absent dad for like, everything leading up to the tragedy. But once like the zombie apocalypse is there, he's not good at being who he is. But all of the criticism about the dad is about how he was. Nobody's criticizing him now that he's trying to get his daughter to the safest place possible. And he's, he's doing everything it's all about how, you weren't actually the right thing. But when it mattered the most in this girl's life, the dad showed up. And I think it's like, okay, that's a dad thing that we can all identify with, because if you're a dad and you don't feel like you failed your kids at some point, I don't think you're dadding hard enough or whatever. At some point you're like, your kid's crying because you said something or did something or you didn't make it to something. And it's like, God, I feel like a piece of garbage right now. But then, if you got to get your kid to the hospital at 2 a.m., you get up and you drive them to the hospital and you sit with them for like 4 hours while they're getting stitched up or while they're getting over an illness. And they have is you there. And you're like, okay, when it mattered, dad was there. And that's what I got from Train to Busan. And that's what I'm not getting from American cinema these days is we're getting like all this troubled backstory, but we're not getting the person to show up when it matters. We're just expecting them to keep failing. It's like, that's not how people work. And that's what's pissing me off.
Well, and why would you want to follow a character like that for an hour and a half or 2 hours? It just doesn't make any sense to me. It's not appealing.
Right.
I think movies and heroes, protagonists need to be inspirational, aspirational. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
I don't want to see me on screen. Like, I want to see, one of my favorite, I loved the first Captain America movie, that they did. And just like the transformation of Chris Evans is like, okay, he goes from, I mean, sure, he's super exaggeratedly small and pipsqueaky or whatever, but then when he comes out with the same values of like just this good natured, noble guy, but suddenly he's able to act. But you notice he doesn't do anything differently than he ever did.
That's right.
That's the best part of the first Captain America movie is he acts the exact same. It's just now he's more capable of doing what he would have already done. He would have already chased the guy down the street in the car. He just never would have caught him because he was
right.
he was he was subnormal even. And that's the magic. And they keep I don't know. I'm getting sick of people missing that.
That's a good movie. That's probably one of the better Marvel movies, and that's Joe Johnston, who also directed The Rocketeer.
Right.
He's old school, and it's these old school guys who just frankly know how to make better films and tell better stories and keep and that movie also was very faithful to the original character and played the man out of time nicely.
Right.
So that was bellwether for me on all the Marvel movies was how are they going to treat Captain America? And I thought, are they going to mock him? Are they going to like take the edge off him? And they didn't. I was very, very pleasantly surprised that they kept him true.
Yeah, and even though Chris is a total libtard, he's such a douche. He's a fantastic Captain America, and and we've all had to learn. Those of us on the center right have all had to learn to separate the artist from the art. When they do something good, you got to give credit where credit's due.
The right's been doing that for a very long time. We've got a lot of practice because the moment and Twitter's just the light shining on it. But if you looked into Hollywood and who was making your movies for a while, you would see people with vastly divergent views from yourself. And it's only recently where we've gone, okay, now I can never watch a movie by this person again. I don't actually do that personally, but that's kind of where culture is going. But it's like we've been practicing this separate art from artists for quite a while because if they do their job competently, then I really don't care what their politics are, and I won't even really know unless I go fishing for it. But if you're on Twitter now and you follow you're like, oh, I like that guy, and then you follow him, it's like, oh my God, you can't do that.
I made that mistake with James Mangold. I tweeted something really nice about Ford versus Ferrari. He liked it and he retweeted it, which blew my mind because I don't know how he saw it.
Yeah.
And so I started following him for about 48 hours. Here comes all the anti-Trump stuff, and I was just like, all right, sorry, dude. Well, we can still be friends, but I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to I'm not into self-abuse,
My favorite Captain America moment, though, from the Marvel movies is when he jumps out of the plane after like Thor like flies out or whatever, and they're like, but those are gods. He's like, there's only one god, ma'am, and he wears a robe and jumps, or he doesn't dress that way or whatever, and he jumps out, and I was like, they nailed it. That's exactly that's what I want.
I couldn't believe they did that. I couldn't,
what I can't believe is that they don't realize how much that resonates. That's what kills me. Is that okay? They did it, and maybe they meant it in a goofy way. Maybe they meant it in a mildly mocking way or like a chiding. But it's like, no, you don't understand. I don't think that this is exactly how the majority of America still feels. Is like they can identify with this, even if they even if they have divergent politics and stuff. At the end of the day, we can go, these are actually just guys in capes, and I'm gonna jump out of the plane with them because who cares? But that's
It's endearing. I mean, that's
Right.
how that's the connection that you make with Cap. And one of the things I've always loved about Cap is the man at a time. Because these days I feel like a man at a time. I think a lot of conservatives and people that are right of center feel like, what country and am I living in, and what is going on? Because I remember not too long ago in the 80s and the 90s when it wasn't like this.
Yeah.
So and Cap always kind of reminds me of my grandfather in a lot of ways too, who fought in the Battle of the Bulge and was one of those greatest generation. And so I see a lot of that, kind of similarities from that generation and that era. And I miss listening to my grandfather talk about modern culture, because he was kind of miffed by it as much as Cap is. It's funny.
Right. Yeah, it's I think it's the idea of not acting. And one of the weirdest moments I had with my grandfather, this is one reason I particularly hate CNN. Because my grandparents, as they aged, they would have CNN on all the time, on every TV in the house. Like, it'd be on literally 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
And I watched them go from normal people into fearful people. And at one point, my grandfather, who was deployed in Korea, in the Korean conflict, whatever it was, at that point, we were having a chat, and he questioned us getting involved in World War II. Like, well, should we have? I'm like, yes, yes, we like this. This isn't you. Was all I could think is what changed from you into who went to Korea, and for his entire life that I can imagine was always a guy who would just go fix stuff. I mean, he was a handyman. That was what he did. He fixed stuff all day. It's like, yes, we went to fix Europe and Japan, and that's just what we did. To now going, well, should we have? It's like, well, yes, of course, yes, we should have. We should have done it. It wasn't like an intellectual discussion about the merits and how we did it and the political. It was just, should we ever fix anything? Is what he was asking, and that's what I hate about the mainstream modern media, is that they turned people I love from people who you just went and fixed the problem, to questioning if the problem should be allowed to continue. It's like, no, just go fix it.
Yeah. We fixed them. We fixed them really good, and then we rebuilt everything on our dime. It's called the Marshall Plan. I mean, that's what people forget. We were not some occupying force. We went over there. We came. We saw. We kicked their ass. And then we rebuilt everything, and what you're talking about. I mean, I know people like that who have been poisoned by CNN, and they're the people that I was referring to earlier, who unfriend you, who cut you out of their life, who blacklist you, who just try and erase you from history. And these people you might have grown up and been good friends with. They might be family members, but the media, when Trump says that the press is the enemy of the people, he's correct. They're destroying the culture because, culture is downstream from politics. If you take a crap in the culture, it will travel downstream into politics, and it'll also travel downstream into movies, comics, entertainment. These people are subverting everything that we hold valuable. Even our comic book characters, they're subverting from within, and it's a scary thing.
Yeah.
Well, there's a line in The Exorcist where the Max von Sydow character explains why the demon is doing what it does. He says its purpose is to make us feel unworthy of God's love, and I think that's CNN's purpose. They show us a fractured mirror image of our society. If Americans really thought about it, they said, this isn't what America is like. What you're showing me isn't my day-to-day experience.
Yeah, go outside.
Yeah, I don't run into people that hate each other. It kills me when they talk about gated suburban communities. I live in a gated suburban community.
Oh, you would.
Yeah, but it's the freaking United Colors of Benetton in here. I mean, I've got my one neighbor is Egyptian, my other next door neighbor is Russian. all my kids' best friends growing up were Korean. We've got Dominicans. We got all kinds of people in here, and everything's awesome. All they care about is, did you mow your lawn?
Right.
We're all in this together. We're all in the gated community together.
Well, it's the liberals. It's Obama who lives in a gated community that's 99% white. It's I mean, it's the left.
Well, it's not gated. It's walled. It's patrolled.
Right. Yeah,
well,
they have a private police.
Well, and that's the funny thing. I see these riots. I see BLM screaming and yelling at people while they're trying to eat dinner, and they're all white.
Yeah.
They're all white, middle to upper class, spoiled, rich little shits who are play acting revolution.
Yeah, no, it's great. That's what I love. Did you see that one? The one chick got arrested the other day, and
dude, they're getting federal beefs.
Yeah,
that's a big deal.
She's facing
federal prison, a federal pound your ass prison.
Yeah. She's facing like 4 or 5 years. Her dad's like a lawyer. I think her parents were both lawyers or something. And she's going, she's going to some college that costs a fortune, some private college, and she got tagged at the riots. And it's like, and she's been doing this since she was 15. It's like, oops, suddenly you're getting Fed charges because you like bombed a federal building, and
dude, it's
she's going, what about my rights? What about my rights? Well, they ended when you threw a bomb.
Yeah.
It's like cause meet effect,
And you still have your rights. You have a right to a fair trial. You have a right for us to presume innocent. And now you got a right to go to a jail cell and find, meet some new girlfriends.
Yeah, you'll get a right to 3 squares a day and a nice regimented schedule. Go ahead.
This whole thing has reminded me of Lord of the Flies. Every time I see these kids running around going crazy, I just say, that's Lord of the Flies. And the Navy ship has yet to show up. And finally, Trump and Barr deputized all of those Oregon police as U.S. Marshals so they could go in and supersede what the mayors and the governors were failing to do.
Yeah.
And they're finally treating these children like they need to be treated, which is there are consequences in life, consequences to your actions, and you're going to learn about them, and you're probably not going to like the way you're going to learn about them. But
the thing is, they're reenacting the French Revolution in reverse order. I mean, the Jacobites, they got popular support and then deposed the king and the nobleman. Then they had the Reign of Terror. You don't start with the Reign of Terror. You're not going to sell anybody in America on a Reign of Terror.
No. And the other thing that I've seen, I listen to a guy who I like, but he's super squirrely. Malcolm Gladwell, phenomenal writer.
Yeah.
I love his podcast, even though he kind of walks the line either way. But I like that about him.
I love Outliers. I love that.
Oh, Outliers! Yeah, Outliers is fantastic.
Fabulous.
His
hard work.
His podcast, Revisionist History, is great. And I would recommend it to anybody. And it's got some really challenging episodes, but one of the really good episodes was about they're trying to change the Woodrow Wilson Library name at Stanford, because Woodrow Wilson was a horrific racist.
The worst. He segregated the military. Most people don't know that, but in World War II, blacks and whites did not fight alongside each other like they had been doing since the Revolutionary War, frankly.
Right.
And Woodrow Wilson, huge racist and huge supporter of Margaret Sanger, who was also a huge racist. These are awful people. Awful. Worst.
And so the woke community was trying to rename the library. He was a dean at Stanford for a while, but they're trying to rename the library. And Gladwell was interviewing this girl who had went before the board, which is all old white guys, which is pretty funny. And she complained about the library, and they just kind of like, okay, thanks. And the question was, well, are you willing to leave Stanford over your views? Like, are you willing to suffer the consequence? And the answer was no. It's like, well, then what do you expect to change? And that's the thing that I think is interesting about this generation and how they approach protests and how they approach civil disobedience is they don't see it as disobedience, and they don't see that the consequence is often the driver of change. And so they don't want the consequence. And they don't expect to get pepper sprayed. They don't expect to get gassed. And it's like, okay, when the Million Man March occurs and when Birmingham occurs, like the video footage of people getting hosed down by fire hoses, or the famous picture of the dog, which is, Malcolm also covered that and how it's kind of a complete misrepresentation of what happened. It doesn't matter though.
Connor.
Yeah, those pictures and the video are what actually changed minds. And if you just go and complain and never have a consequence, you're not actually going for change. You're just going to bitch.
Right.
And people expect this insulation. I think it's great. I think it's great that these people are seeing the consequences of their actions for two reasons. One, actions do have consequences, and please stop burning things. And two, the change that needs to happen will happen when the consequence is appalling in the face of the action. And it's a driver in two ways. And so I'm fully willing to recognize that we have issues with police violence generally, and the consequences of that police violence will drive change. That's why I was actually hopeful with Floyd's situation, is that everybody looks at that and goes, okay, well, regardless of the circumstances, I don't like watching a man die with a cop like kind of grinning the whole time. I don't like that. And we can argue back and forth about whether or not he's guilty, but people look at that picture and go, I don't like seeing this. And I'm like, yay, we get to address police violence. And then, but a tide of people come in, they're like, police violence against just blacks. And I'm like, what about the other ones though?
Well, that's what was so great about, body cams. And that obviously was born out of a shooting that people didn't like, probably a number of them, so, and frankly, those police body cams are the greatest gift that cops have ever had. I mean, because the most compelling images that have come out from them is when a cop has to holster up their gun on a guy with, like the other day, there was a video of a guy attacking a cop with two size, like ninja size.
That's how I want to go out. I'm Raphael, naked in the street with just a red headband on and size.
This guy's just charging at this cop, and the cop's black, and he's like, "I'm gonna tase you, bro. I'm gonna tase you." And he said "bro," which I thought was kind of funny.
Love it.
And then so he tases the guy. The guy's obviously probably, tase doesn't do much to everybody. It keeps coming at him. And the cop is literally running away and pointing his firearm behind him and just unloading on the guy.
Yeah.
And they're just kind of like running in circles, and he put him down, and he's so distraught after it. I mean, he's on borderline tears. I mean, he's just winded and just completely and totally disheveled. And it's emotional. Just what's more emotional to me is his reaction after he shoots the guy, because you can feel the anguish. And you can hear it in his voice. I don't give a shit about the guy on the street.
Yeah.
He asked for it. That's suicide by cop, frankly. So,
well, but what I love about the body cam footage is there was one the other day where a guy, when you see it live on the body cam footage, at first it looks like the cop just, like, the guy's acting erratically and the cop just unloads on him. And then when you slow it down, you see that the guy is pulling a gun, around. Yeah. And as a normal person who's not trained and not experiencing danger constantly, and literally when you're not in the actual danger, so your adrenaline hasn't kicked in and time isn't actually slowing down for your vision, you don't see the gun coming out. But the cop did, and he puts the guy down. And only when you slow it down do you see it, and you go, oh my God. Like, this is so much harder than I think it is. And that's when I love body cam footage, is when it exonerates the officer. And even at first glance, you look and you go, okay, why'd he shoot this guy? And then you slow it down, you go, oh my God, like that guy was pulling a gun. I think his partner like have mentioned it or something, because he was at a different angle and could see him from behind. But it's like, would I have been able to do that? And if he didn't shoot this guy, he's dead. That's what you know. And that's been the good part of body cam footage, largely, as well as when you do catch the occasional cop who acted poorly. But those are more rare than people give credit for.
Yeah, big time. So
yeah, this is the most demonstrative body cam footage I've seen is this petite little woman cop pulls this guy over on a stop. She gets out and he gets out with a bayonet. And you can see on the body cam, he's coming for her. Now, she puts 3 rounds in him, center mass, and gets a jam in her piece.
Sure.
And he's still coming.
Right.
And she clears the jam and empties it into him. Because that was the only thing that was going to stop this guy. You know, God knows what he was on.
We need
but that
a
was
law.
the most interesting one because, you know, 3 rounds, center mass, he wasn't stopping.
No.
He wasn't.
No, it takes even if you hit him like right in the aortic valve above the heart, it's still going to take someone 30 seconds to lose muscle strength, and it could take them a minute and a half to bleed out, and that's about the fastest that they'll go. But we need a law, though. You've just inspired me that anyone using a bayonet must affix the bayonet before they're allowed to charge a police officer. I think that's fair. That'll solve that problem. Get Congress on it. Mine on the bad end of body cam footage was it was Daniel Shaver, a guy in a hallway of a hotel in Arizona. He was at a La Quinta, and he was going to get up and go to Denny's the next morning because he was at a La Quinta. But there was a report that he had a gun, and he was a pest control guy, so he had an air rifle in his hotel room. And so they have him come out and they had him on his knees and they're yelling instructions at this guy who seems to have had a few to drink or whatever. And they tell him to, cross his feet. He's on his knees, cross his feet, put his hands up directly, like no arm bend above his head. They actually yell at him about the arm bend, and that he's supposed to shuffle forward to these police officers. And he ends up kind of going down, on the ground and doing a crawl. And his knee pulls down his pants as he's going. He's wearing baggy shorts. And so he reaches kind of instinctively to his waistband, and the cop just guns him down in the hallway. And there are 5 cops there. There's one guy, and they're yelling these really difficult orders at him, and it's all on camera. And it's like, this is the bad side. And this is why we need body cameras. We need it for the good side and the bad side. And I hope I want them to start recording all day. Because we've got storage technology now where you can put an SD card in there and it can last all day. They can go back and throw that on the server, and then we can reference literally anything at any point. And we need to start doing that. Because I think cops should actually kind of want that for the most part.
I believe they do. I mean,
yeah. The good ones do. You know,
the good ones. They don't. You know, I know cops that have had to kill people in the line of duty. You know, it affects them the rest of their life. People don't think about that aspect of it.
Yeah, because that's one thing. I was talking to someone who is not necessarily in a good mental place, and they were talking about basically should they suicide by cop, and I was like, no. I mean, first of all, please don't kill yourself. Second of all, no, don't do that to a cop. He's got to live with the fact that he's killed you. Even if you never meant to hurt him, like you just want to draw the fire your way. Like, no, that guy will carry that, with him at dinner for the rest of his life or whatever. It's cops don't. I say this about just about every police violence thing that I talk about or cover is I don't think that cop woke up that day and said, I'm going to kill this guy. Right. And we've got to stop thinking about people that way in general. When someone makes a comment that is deemed offensive or racist or whatever, it's like, that guy didn't wake up that day to go, I'm going to piss off the entire earth by making a joke. He went, I bet this will make someone laugh. And maybe he was dumb and wrong, but he was just dumb and wrong. And that's not what we need to be punishing people for.
Well, that's kind of gets back to what we were talking about, like with Roseanne, and what I said about forgiveness. I mean, and I don't know, maybe we are so separate from God at this point within the culture that we don't think about forgiving people. But I mean, that's what Christ is about. I mean, that's one of the resounding themes of Christ and Christianity is forgiveness, and we need to cut people some fucking slack, big time.
Yeah, but the
Yeah.
forgiveness doesn't fit into your political agenda.
That's right.
No. Forgiving. Here's your mistake, Brett. Is forgiving people reminds you that they're people. And I genuinely think that's the issue, is that we have through our social distancing long before COVID of social media, we're interacting with people as if they are the computer program they're on. We're on.
Oh, yeah, that's very true. Let me tell you, I was telling somebody the other day that, if this was the 80s or the 90s and Antifa was doing what they're doing, it would have lasted about a week, because they would have the living shit beaten out of them by normal people. 80s, 90s, there's not all these cameras everywhere. You don't have cameras on your phones. And it's the same with Twitter. You talk to somebody in the 80s or the 90s like you do face to face with somebody like you do on Twitter, they'd knock your ass out. and that would be it. And that's the lesson you would learn, and you probably never talk to anybody like that ever again. But this Twitter sphere and the social media gives people this weird false sense of security, and they're these blowhard keyboard warriors. A lot of them are anonymous. That's what I love the most, is these tough guys who are hiding behind a fucking avatar, of like Dragon Ball or something. It's just like, what are you, 12, and you're telling me to go fuck myself on Twitter, I mean, say that to my face.
To be fair, and
we'll see how it goes.
To be fair, when I was 12, I might have told you to go fuck yourself to your face.
Well, when I was 12, when I was 12, I was crank calling people. We were like pre-jerky boys, before caller ID, and saying all kinds of horrible things. And it wasn't like, it's Mike Hunt there, it was like worse than that.
It's like, you're a cunt and you're there.
That's right. Forget the refrigerator running. Fuck you.
Yeah. No, I agree. And we've, it's a weird extrapolation of an armed society as a polite society. And it's a society where you could get chump checked, is what I'll call it just on the fly here. You could get chump checked for your words and your actions. In the 80s and 90s, before everybody had a camera, and you wouldn't go to jail because they go to the police and be like, well, he hit me. It's like, well, but were you a dick though? And that was the end of it's like, I'm not going to charge this guy. But now it's like, oh, he hit me. Here's the video. It's like, oh my God. And I also, go ahead.
When I was where I grew up, I mean, we had a confirmed bachelor in the neighborhood who got a little too friendly with the paper boy. So the dad's visited him with a baseball bat, and that guy moved. And then we had a neighbor, one of the punks in the neighborhood gave his daughter pills, and she had an emergency room, and he walked across the street and gunned the kid down with a shotgun.
Yeah.
And the cops came around to confiscate the shotgun and said, maybe you should move. That was it. Guy was never charged.
Yeah, well, I think, why are you lying? That guy didn't gun the guy down with a shotgun. The other guy fell on some pellets. That's what happened.
When he literally walked across the street holding a 12 gauge, and he says to the kid, "Did you give pills to my daughter?" The kid goes, "Yeah, what are you going to do about
it?" Well, let me show you.
That's like the scene in the Death Wish remake, which is my favorite scene in the movie, where Bruce Willis walks up to the ice cream man, drug dealer. He just walks up, and and I love that movie. I swear Eli Roth is like a closet conservative, because that movie, it's like, I told I had lunch with some execs with the NRA one time, and I said, you guys should be making movies like that. Okay. Bruce Willis walks up, he's got the hoodie on, and we had the whole hoodie thing going on with Trayvon Martin at the time, which I thought was a nice touch in the movie. A white guy in a hoodie walks up to this black guy drug dealer with the ice cream. And are you the ice cream man? Yeah. He's like, who are you? Your last customer. Pow, 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 pow. It's just classic. I saw that movie with my ex-girlfriend, and I literally wanted to like jump up in my seat and just be like, yeah. It's just a classic. It's just classic Bruce Willis, classic scene. Very
Yeah.
different from the original, but still a good movie.
And it's what every single person wants to think they will do. That's what Death Wish nails. Is like Death Wish does a funny line with the original. I haven't seen the remake, but the original walks a funny line with politics, because he's like
he's a liberal.
Yeah, and he's against guns and everything. But it's like
and he has to come to my town, Tucson, to learn how to go OK Corral on people.
Right, but you also find out that he was, I think he was in the army or something. He had a marksman rank, and so he was actually. What was that?
He was a conscientious objector in the original film.
That's right.
That's right. Yeah.
Wow.
But he grew up like with guns and stuff, and hunting, I think, is what it was.
No, I think you're wrong. He was in the original movie. He was completely unfamiliar with guns. He served in the army, because somebody says, "What were you in the army?" He says, "I was a CO." "Oh, commanding officer?" He goes, "No, conscientious objector." So he didn't know anything about guns in the original film. He was a New York liberal.
I thought I remembered him being a good shot, but I'm probably just wrong on
that. Very good with the guns.
Yeah, he goes to the range with that developer guy.
Yeah,
he most close to guys before he kills them.
Yeah.
Okay, sure, but yeah, so they're playing.
I just wish that in either iteration they had used the original ending of the novel. In the novel, he begins going after a kid. First of all, in the novel, his reign as a vigilante virtually ends crime in Manhattan. And so he has to go further and further out to find crimes. So he goes after kids who throw rocks on commuter trains. This had happened at the time. A woman gets killed in the story by a rock flying through the window.
Right.
So he's hunting these kids in the rail yards outside New York, and he guns a kid down. And then he looks up, and there's a cop watching it. And then he's like, "What do I do? I can't shoot a cop. Like, he's got a code."
Yeah.
And he just puts the gun on the ground, puts his hands up, and the cop turns his back and just walks away. And that's the end of the movie. And why they never put that in any of the movies? That is a killer ending.
Oh, that's a great scene.
Yeah.
By the way, Chuck, you would love Conrad Kurz from the Warhammer 40K universe. I don't know if you know anything about Warhammer 40K, but Conrad Kurz is basically Death Wish. He's a almost like a superhuman being created, and he lands on this world that is just misery and murder, and he decides that he'll fix it because he's way more powerful than your average human, and he fixes it by implementing a reign of terror on any crime, death penalties on any crime, and it's broadcast to the world, and it's always horrifying. He's great.
Isn't that like the Philippines?
Yeah.
I love it. You gotta love that Duterte guy.
Yeah.
I mean, boy, what a classic.
Yeah, you called Obama a pussy, right?
Yeah. Okay, I gotta. Here's what I gotta do. We should. I love talking to you guys, but we should probably wrap the stream up here, pretty soon. And I've got a bunch of chats to read through.
Cool.
So we'll read through the chats, guys. I see that some people have backed Black Tide Rising during the show. Make sure, if you haven't, go check it out. If it's something you like, buy it. Support these guys. Support what they're doing. Support good work. I mean, that's the main thing. Get a good story and entertain yourselves is the trick. And we'll do this. And again, feel free to interject on any of these chats if you have a thought, even if it's unrelated to the stream. Because this one's kind of a hot button. This first one I'm going to read right here. Legal Smeagol says, please do a short clip on if Netflix's Cuties violates Minnesota corporate CP laws, child pornography laws. And if someone in Minnesota watches it, could they face child pornography prosecution? YouTube channel R&R Law Group did one for Arizona, and it seems to violate both in Arizona. Are you guys familiar with Cuties on Netflix?
I read about it. It's disgusting.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I remember the poster, the promotion that they did months ago that then they pulled, and that's kind of when the controversy started. But it's normalizing this kind of behavior, pedophilia. It's disgusting.
It's been going on for a long time. I mean, they've been trying in academia to get this normalized about sexualizing children and the rest of it, and it's something that has to be fought against.
Yeah, that's the thing with cuties that's really pissing me off now is that the creator of it came out and she wrote a thing. They're trying to apologize really hard for this lady, and I get her intent, and maybe her intent is pure, but she says what she's doing is she's trying to shine a light on this actual problem. It's like, okay, that's fine, but if we do the A/B test where we replace what you're doing with something else and see if it's okay, we find out that if you want to shine a light on child trafficking by trafficking a bunch of children to generate talk about it, that would be a problem. We wouldn't be okay with that. So if you're trying to shine a light on child sexual exploitation by making a movie that generally sexually exploits children, I've got a problem with that. There are other ways to do it. And there are other mediums that are better at tackling this stuff. I think actually books are a much better way to do it because there isn't a child. In this case, they auditioned 650 children around the age of 11 to do twerk dancing, which means some producers sat and watched 650 children dance in a sexualized way. And that alone should be like, nope, that's where we're going to draw the line on this one.
And they probably made a fortune privately selling the audition tapes.
Yeah, that's terrifying.
I was just going to say, these audition tapes are going to leak at some point in time. And that's what's really going to kill this show. This show is not going to survive. And it's a real shame because, everybody's hot on Cobra Kai right now, even though I was telling everybody how awesome it was 2 years ago and nobody listened. And now everybody's like, oh, Cobra Kai. I told you so. And it's a shame because, they've got a real winner there. And
right.
And they're going to suffer because of this. I mean, Cancel Netflix was trending, I think, yesterday and the day before. I don't know if it's still trending on Twitter, but it was like #1 on Twitter for a while. And a bunch of my friends like Jack Posobiec were pushing it, and Jack ended up getting blocked by Netflix, which is because
that's an accomplishment.
Blocked by Netflix
on Twitter.
Yeah,
on Twitter.
But I mean, that's pretty impressive to get blocked by a corporate Twitter account.
Jack's got 1 million followers now, which he just cracked. So I mean, he's he's powerful. He's a force to be reckoned with on there, and he's got influence. And
right.
A bunch of my friends, Megan Fox, who writes for PJ Media, she was tweeting about it, and telling everybody to cancel the Netflix subscription, and it's awful. I just don't even understand. I had issues with the James Gunn stuff as well. I really. The one area where I take issue with, where I really draw a hard line in the sand, especially when it comes to comedy, because that's how James Gunn was couching his issues. There's just jokes, and that's what people say. Brett, what are you talking about? That James Gunn guy, he's just joking. So what I always ask these people who give me that kind of response is, I say, okay, fine. What's your favorite James Gunn pedo joke? And I never get an answer.
Mine is the one you just told. That was hilarious.
It's the same with that Dan Harmon guy who was humping a baby, and the Rick and Morty guy. I said, okay, fine, they're just jokes. What's your favorite Dan Harmon pedo joke?
Right.
Silence. Nobody ever answers me. Never.
Well, mine is the one where he was humping a baby. That's my favorite. Because I'm not familiar with them, but no, I believe it.
It's insane, dude. These people are insane.
It's a weird thing.
On Netflix, though, because I hate going after somebody for content, even though it's loathsome content.
Yeah. And
we do all kind of owe Netflix a favor because their algorithms proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that America hates Jane Fonda. So, because when they had that show with Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin, when they would, in their solicits, show a picture of Jane Fonda, no one clicked on it to watch it. I mean, no one.
Yeah.
And so they experimented, and there was an episode involving a vibrator, and they put a picture up of a vibrator instead, and hundreds of thousands of people clicked on it.
Smarter
so
than
a vibrator to looking at Jane Fonda.
The vibrator's smarter than Jane Fonda, so that's
without a doubt.
Man, oh man.
I suppose.
No, and I'm not on the like cancel Netflix train. I'm more on my solution is simple. Hey, please don't make stuff like this. And then Netflix, whoever it was who decided to actually promote this by showing these children in like midriff cheerleader uniforms that would have made my college blush. Can you just maybe fire them? Like, just think about how they've impacted your brand, if nothing else. And then please don't do it again. Because I like Netflix. I like my Netflix shows and stuff like that. But it's
there's some good content on there. You know, there's a good movie called The King with Timothy Chalamet, who's the new Paul Atreides. Fantastic film. Then there's the Outlaw King, which is about Robert the Bruce. That was really well done with Chris Pine. You know, they, like Amazon Prime, they do produce a lot of crap.
Yeah.
As far as original content, but every once in a while you get something that is just fabulous.
Altered Carbon was great. The first season.
Second season.
It's kind of mediocre.
Chuck, right. what was that Netflix movie with Hemsworth where he was a spec ops guy and he was rescuing that kid?
It was like The Evacuator, one of those titles.
Yeah,
Triple Frontier was good too. It's the only Ben Affleck movie I've ever liked.
You know the one good thing about the second season of Altered Carbon being terrible is you can directly correlate the goodness of Altered Carbon with the amount of nudity in it.
It's a good barometer.
When there's more nudity in Altered Carbon, it was a way better show.
It's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. Well, the thing is, I mean, about Netflix, I mean, I forgot where I was going with that, but there's some awesome shows on that.
Well, they've even got a lot of stuff that Adam Carolla's been producing on his Chassis channel. They've got the 24-Hour War, which is the documentary, The Real Ford versus Ferrari. They got a great Carroll Shelby documentary on there. They have a Monty Python documentary. They just launched a new Unsolved Mysteries, which is really good, and they even have the same kind of updated theme music, that got all us kids kind of spooked out back in the 80s.
Yeah, I remember. The best suggestion I've heard is that Netflix should allow the U.S. Marshals access to who watches Cuties more than 50 times.
That's a sting operation in the works right there, man. Wow.
Do it. If one good thing comes out of Cuties, hopefully it'll be someone getting arrested.
I think they're going to pull it at some point in time. I just don't see how they survive this with keeping it up, because they're just getting way too much bad PR.
Yeah. So. It's and that's the okay thing. If people are just out there going, you know what, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to buy this. I'm not going to support it. That's what we're supposed to do. And it's to me, it's not about boycotting. Like I don't advocate people to cancel anything. I just say don't buy it if you don't like it.
That's how the world used to work in the 80s and the 90s, when we were all expected to be fucking adults. If you don't like it, change the channel.
Yeah.
Don't watch it. Don't frequent it with your money. But if we're going to go around canceling people, we're just as bad as the left.
Yeah.
So it's just not necessary, or do what we're doing. Go out and create your own stuff. That's the other thing I can't stand about the culture right now is people just love to bitch and moan and complain. And frankly, a lot of people on the right just like to piss and moan about culture. They don't do anything. They don't, they won't even support guys like Chuck and I who go out there and, and give them an alternative. They sit around and they piss and moan. Oh, Hollywood sucks and Netflix sucks and this sucks and everything sucks. And I'm just going to sit in my basement and, read the Iliad or something.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with reading the Iliad. Oh my goodness.
Let's not start on Homer, okay?
Yeah, right. But I mean, there's fantastic alternatives out there. Black Tide Rising is one of them. And it's kind of like, I'm not satisfied with just pissing and moaning. I want to create a solution. And I want to create content, and we need to get in the game. We really have ceded the culture war to the left.
Yeah.
By not participating. By not creating. And you can't fight a culture war unless you create culture.
It's there to be won, because if you look at most successful pop culture in movies and television, there's a conservative angle to it. You know,
Oh yeah.
whether the creators meant it or not, you know, the ideals of courage and loyalty and things like that are still things that people value.
Right.
So it wouldn't be that big a reach.
And the other thing is, this is what I think, this is what you guys have been doing, and then Comicsgate, and I think this independent creation wave, which is, it's highly profitable, it's highly you don't have to get 20 million people to see your thing to do well with it. And
That's right.
It allows us to we can just create so much stuff, because the cost of entry for a consumer isn't high. Like on your guys, $25. You're going to spend $25 buying anything at all to entertain you. So it's like you can buy this project. You could buy 10 projects over the course. Frankly, you could buy 12 projects over the course of a year, one a month, and support a ton of independent creators without having a huge cost of entry. $25 a month is very affordable for many people, considering other entertainment. And we can just keep creating stuff. You don't need to market it. You don't need to make a Marvel Universe movie where you got to get 20 million people in the seats to buy the tickets. You can just have 2,000 people buy it, and it'll be successful for the creator. It'll be fulfilling for those 2,000 people, and hopefully they'll tell one of their friends each about how they can do it. And I think we just need people, those guys who are reading the Iliad, to catch up. And just realize that they can do it. Like, you can read the Iliad, and while you're doing it, buy this stuff that borrows and builds on the same principles of why you like Diomedes and why you like Ajax, because Ajax is like, no, I've got to get there and kill as many of these scumbags as possible. And why you like Priam, who says, nope, you're never going to breach our gates, and we will never back down. Like, you know, the Iliad it's pro-Greek, but it's fair to the heroism of characters on both sides, and you can identify with that. And we've got guys making books based on these principles and making movies, and I think it's going to expand.
I think one of the ultimate acts of protest for people on the right is to support projects like this. Even if you don't like comics, you might know somebody that likes comics. You know, you might not be into comics, but your niece, your nephew, your brother, your sister, your grandkid, they might love Black Tide Rising. They will love it. You know, and frankly, you know, I'd love to see more people getting involved from the standpoint of, it's fine if you want to complain on Twitter, but back it up. Put your money where your mouth is and support independent creators like us, because we are creating an alternative culture and content which you will love and you will appreciate. And also, you know, everything we get out of Hollywood these days is basically a reboot, a rehash, a threequel, or a prequel. There's nothing new here. There's absolutely nothing new. And what's great about things like Black Tide is that is an already established brand that is successful. But at the same time, we're going to put a very interesting and creative and crisp and engaging spin on it by bringing visual storytelling into the elements of that franchise or that IP. And I'm really excited about it. And again, you know, protest with your wallet. You know, yes, it's fine if you don't want to go and see that movie, but spend your money on something which your values align with the creators. And that's certainly, you know, that's certainly me and Chuck. That's for certain.
Absolutely. And not just with the creators, but with the creation. Those values of creators do come through. I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's why so many of these projects that we're seeing from the big two or from Hollywood are crap. It's like they're just writing their own values.
I mean, you know, true creativity and innovation, it can't survive in this Hollywood environment, and it can't survive within the big two. You know, basically Hollywood and the big two is where good ideas and creativity and innovation goes to die. Yeah. You know, the true trailblazers right now are in independent comics, and they're doing crowdfunds, and they're going direct to the customer. They're circumventing the system. They're circumventing Marvel, DC, the editors, the gatekeepers, the people that say, Chuck, I don't like you, so you're never going to work for me, or I don't like this story, do something different. You know, it's so liberating as an artist and a creator to do these crowdfunds and do these independent projects, because it's no holds barred, man. There's nobody telling us no.
Right.
And to the consumer, I can't think of anything more exciting than that. And that's one of the reasons why when, you know, Mike and Richard came to me with Black Tide Rising, I just thought, wow, this is really cool. This is really fresh and interesting and engaging, and we can just take this thing, we can just jack this thing up to 11 and go crazy with it, and nobody's gonna tell us no.
Right.
You know?
Right.
It's exciting.
Yes, definitely. Stooge Muffin Stuffin says, these people are not activists. They yell and scream for change, but none of them are willing to make the sacrifice to make the change. This is going back to our conversation earlier. True activists will put everything on the line. Sorry for the late reply. No problem, buddy. Yeah, no, and that's kind of what I was talking about. People who just don't want the consequence. It's like, well, you should just change because I'm loud. Okay.
And then you're like, what?
Yeah. The Dragon's Treasure says, I took the hit and watched Cuties. Ooh, making a video taking out the pedo stuff and looking at plot. Spoiler, it's terrible. Video will be out tomorrow at 11 a.m. You know, it's amazing because it's almost like you could tell a story about the struggles of young, you know, adolescent girls struggling with sexuality and identity in the age of social media without actually showing them in a sexualized way. It's like you could maybe, if you decided to put some thought into writing it, you could probably manage. It's might be possible somewhere. I don't know if any writer ever has tackled the idea of children dealing with identity growing up. Maybe there's at least one book somewhere that did it. They're acting like this woman's a revolutionary.
You know, it's interesting.
They had us reading in high school.
Do you guys remember the whole JonBenet Ramsey thing and how that sort of brought the whole pageant, I guess it's underage pageant. I don't know what you call that.
Like, sexualizing 6-year-olds or whatever.
I thought that was really creepy and really gross. And I remember the kind of the virulent reaction that the public had to that at the time. They thought it was gross and inappropriate, and how these moms were pushing these kids into these pageants, and, you know, they doll them all up with the hair and the makeup, and it was so bizarre. And you come to this Cuties thing in comparison. It's just sort of like, how far have we fallen? But at the same time, I'm encouraged by the reaction to it, which is, I would say, at least 95% total disgust.
Right.
Yeah, I would. That's a good point. It shows the minority of people who are like, no, this is great. We can also just go ahead and put FBI watches on all of them.
I hope the feds are doing that, man.
I mean, U.S. Marshals Missing Children Unit. That's the one I want. The FBI will wait till the kids are all in their 30s to do anything about it.
Yeah.
I actually read a good book about that. It was not focused on this, but it involved sexualization of a child in a weird way. It's called The Magic Bean. I think the guy who wrote is John Nichols. He also wrote the Milagro Beanfield War. He's like a white guy who wrote Chicano literature. It was really weird, and was accepted into the community. But
does he know Sean King?
Yeah.
This was Malcolm X.
This was before, like, you had to be a specific race to write about issues that might. So he wrote this a while back. And the Milagro Beanfield War has been made into a book or a movie from the book. But the Magic Bean, one of the characters in it was this woman who she like exudes a sexual presence. And the interesting thing, he's writing about her in retrospect as a child in the book when they flash back to scenes, and men always had this sort of, like, no one was actually like creeping on her like pedophilically, but she just always emitted this aura of like sexual prowess, and it was not prowess, like of just sexuality and sensuality, and it was more exemplifying, I guess, this aspect of womanhood that can enthrall men. It wasn't like it's weirdly written where it's not a creepy thing, as creepy as it kind of sounds as I describe it in the abstract.
It sounds a little Lolita, you know, to a degree.
Yeah, it's like the idea that men would do things for this child without knowing why. And as she became a woman, it was like the same thing. Men were just drawn to the presence of this person. And Chicano literature has a lot of these elements of mysticism built into it, and that's what's going on throughout the book. Is everything is mystical without being magical, and that's kind of this character. But it's like there are ways to tackle these issues, and that character had to really struggle with that because it was written, you know, at a time when women struggled with the idea of not having OnlyFans.
Right.
Whereas now it's like, well, if all men are just sexually complicit with her, that they'll just throw her money on the internet. That's not what was going on. She had to deal with like developing herself as a person, in the fact that in the wake of everybody being automatically willing to give in to her and not just using that to her advantage, was part of the storytelling. And you know, like I said, there are ways to tackle these issues. They've been done before. Writers,
yes,
just
they have.
Do some research.
Well, I mean,
lazy writing is what it comes down to.
Exactly.
You can present material like that without being prurient.
Right. Oh, you
well,
used a good word there.
I think Kubrick was able to do that with Lolita. I don't find that as being exploitative, but there's only one Stanley Kubrick.
Well, you know? But Leon the Professional, you know, deals with this with a very uncomfortable relationship, or at least hints of it. But you don't watch Leon the Professional and go, "Oh, I can't wait till the little girl is twerking."
You know what's funny about that? I saw that in the theater. Aside from Natalie's dress, her wardrobe, I always found it to be more of a father-daughter relationship. Yeah. I never got any kind of sexual, innuendos between those two characters.
No.
Right. Well, and I think that's part of the interplay is like they don't, but other people looking in see this relationship and their brain goes to these places automatically. I think
absolutely. I mean, people do project their own stuff onto art all the time, whether it's music, film, whatever. That's kind of what art functions as in a lot of ways through culture. You know,
right?
That's how you can identify with it in a lot of ways.
People ask me what's the theme of your work. I said, well, that's up to you. I don't go into writing a story thinking about the theme. You know?
Right.
Well, and why ruin that?
Great English, you know.
Well, and why ruin that connection if they have one? I mean, you might ruin it by telling them something completely different. You know,
I always use the example of I knew someone who wrote their college thesis on the colors chosen for Dr. Seuss books and the psychological ramifications of why did Theodore Geisel choose these particular colors. And she actually got to meet Geisel and told him all about her thesis. And he said, well, the printers picked the colors.
Exactly. I knew you were going there because back in the day with, you know, it was just like in comics, we had the Dr. Martin watercolor dyes. You know, I come from an era of coloring before Photoshop. When I started in the 90s, we were still using traditional mediums. And those Dr. Martin watercolor dyes that were those flat colors on all the old comics on newsprint, they only had like, I think 40 or 50 colors that you could choose from. Your very limited palette. You know, and those guys had to do more with less. It was quite a feat.
One of the first things I learned in comics was you never specify the color of anything in a script because it would never turn out that color. I remember at a Bat Summit, Doug Mensch was all upset because it was important that this car in one of his stories be red and the color is colored in blue. And we all just said, you know, what are you, nuts?
What is he? What is it? He's like the guy in used cars who's afraid of red cars.
Yeah.
Rudy.
You know, it's like the colorist doesn't read the script. The letterer barely reads the script.
I will attest to that. I would, you know, it's funny over the years. I would usually skim a script. I would pay attention to any notes that were directed to me. Colorists do this, do that. But it wasn't really until, I probably shouldn't say this, but it wasn't until I started doing my own books that I actually read the script from front to back.
I understand. I've had very few colorists who ask me for the script. Very few.
That's weird. I see. Yeah. I'd feel strange doing that. Just because. I mean, at least I'd want the appearance.
Yeah, I want you to think I read it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was really good.
It was really good, Chuck. It's fantastic.
Interested? Yeah.
Give me specific feedback, Brett. No.
What did this guy say in that panel?
It was great.
It's mind blowing.
Jillian Seed has a request for you, Chuck, and it's to say, "Welcome to Jurassic Park."
Dude, I've always told you got that voice.
Well, you kind of have the look of Robert Hammond too. Yeah.
I got the coronavirus goatee going on here. Yeah. Welcome to Jurassic Park.
Thank you for that. Laughing Kuru says, "Yo, I actually ordered my copy of Trump Space Force the other day. Also, how bad writing in canon stories in Marvel and others? How do you feel with fans siding with fan fictions and headcanon over them?" So I guess over the Marvel writing. How do you guys feel about that?
Fan fiction is what it is, I mean,
isn't Marvel writing at this point fan fiction as well?
Pretty much, yeah.
Because none of these guys made the stuff that they're doing.
That's right.
They didn't create this stuff, so that's what I've always said. It's like they just trolled DeviantArt for someone who could draw enough that they could pay $22,000 a year, and the same thing with the writing. It's like, okay. You go on a fan forum of Spider-Man, you find someone who wrote some sort of story, and you offer them a gig to do a 3-issue run or whatever.
Yeah, the writing and the art looks just awful these days, and a lot of that has to do with page rates haven't gone up in 25 years,
right?
And that's just basically priced all of the American talent out of the market. I don't think even if Chuck wasn't blacklisted, DC and Marvel probably couldn't afford him today. They'd rather outsource that to some cheap foreign labor, and it's the same with the art and the coloring. The page rates have been suppressed, kept so artificially low over the years, and haven't adjusted to inflation that it's just offshored all of the work to places where that money works, whether it's the Philippines or Vietnam or Italy or South America.
And the writers are there as tourists traveling through the comic book business on their way to other gigs, and they want Marvel and DC in their resume as enhancers.
Right. Yeah, they're trying to get to Hollywood.
Well, they are. They are.
Everybody wanted to be a lifer. Everybody was there for
right.
The wheels came off.
That's right. You had guys back in the day. You would start off as like a gopher in the Marvel bullpen in New York. And you'd work your way into being an assistant inker or being a colorist or doing backgrounds. I started out as an apprentice coloring backgrounds for Jason Jensen at Chaos Comics. Don Hudson, who was one of the artists on Clinton Cash, started in the Marvel bullpen in the 80s doing cleanup work for Mark Texeira. That and Mark Morales and these guys, they all started out on the bottom and worked their way up for the sole purpose of being there forever. I mean, that was the dream. You achieved the dream once you got there, and now everybody uses it as a stepping stone to try and get into the movie wing.
Right.
Even the editors. You want to know.
Actually, the editors.
Absolutely.
Especially the editors. My first job at Marvel was writing comic books.
Wow.
I didn't get anybody coffee.
Jillian Seed says, also finished my Archie Sonic comics collection. Okay. Tara Cole says, how do I become a member? A member of what? The channel? There's I don't actually know. There's
subscribe.
There's subscribing, and then there's membership where it's like a monthly membership thing. There should be a button somewhere Sorry. I know you can go to youtube.com/Rekieta Law.
There you go,
That's what you're
Nick.
talking about. I just don't know if it's actually under this video or not because it doesn't show me.
Find the button.
Yeah, it's the member button. Skeet Neat says, I will love to declare that Doom Patrol came out before X-Men. That is all. Also, fuck the Thalmor and the Imperium. What? We went to Skyrim and 40K there. That was interesting. Oh my goodness. Mr. Security says, Nick, are you okay? It's not midnight. You're not supposed to be live right now. Is midnight too late for you now, you effing boomer? What's going on with you? No, I will actually have another show at the normal time as well. WP Why Not says, hi from England. Love the show, but I only ever see the replays thanks to time zones. First time catching you live, so these grift bucks are long overdue. Here's to many more great streams. Cheers. Hey, thank you. Jillian Seed says, Chuck and Brett, any thoughts on Penders versus Archie?
Who? What?
Who's Penders?
Penders v. Archie. I don't know what that is at all.
Chuck, didn't you write Archie?
I wrote a little bit of Archie, but I don't know who Penders is.
Yeah, I mean, I read old Archie.
Sounds like a middleweight fight.
You know what I'm looking forward to are the middle age fights that are now starting. We've got Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr. or whatever coming up, and it's like, let's get some guys who can really get hurt in there. That'll be perfect.
Yeah, there's another guy coming back.
Fedor Emelianenko is gonna fight. Apparently, gonna fight. Who is it? The big wrestler. Why can't Brock Lesnar?
Oh wow!
I think there's a Brock Lesnar and Fedor Emelianenko fight, and I'm like, what? Why? they're both in danger. Penders versus Archie is a legal case.
Huh.
Penders versus Archie.
He sued Archie. Ken Penders sued Archie Comics.
Looking at that now, yeah.
Oh wow!
Archie Comics. Well, good luck with that.
Yeah, Archie originally claims Penders had a signed work for hire contract, making everything Penders had created the property of Sega. However, Archie Comics' legal team failed to produce the contract from Penders' time of work at the company, so the lawsuit led to a settlement and ended in June 2013.
Oh, okay. So this is a while back then.
Interesting. Huh.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a dog in that fight. I worked for Archie a little bit.
Sure.
So.
Well, we'll see. I have no idea about it all. Skeet Neat says, Brett and Chuck, have you ever heard of the legendary comic reviewer named Linkara? Ethan Van Sciver is his biggest fan.
Not as legendary as he believes, apparently. I don't know. I don't know the legend.
So I'll take that as no.
Is there a song about this person?
I don't. Yeah, their name was recorded in the annals. No, I have no idea.
Their name appears on the internet, so they're famous.
I think Linkara is an old YouTube personality. But
gotcha. Interesting.
So
oh my God, we have old YouTube personalities now.
Hey, wait a minute now. You be careful, sir. Gladiator says, hey, it's Brett, the rainbow glasses guy. Are you the rainbow glasses guy? I don't even know what that means.
I don't even know what that means either.
Okay. Thunderbolt Village says, Chuck, Tim Drake is my favorite superhero. Thank you for creating such a wonderful character. I have the original full run. New 52 destroyed him.
Well, thank you very much.
There you
go. As we called my house in Pennsylvania, the house that Robin built. So I like Tim Drake too.
Sparks7907 says, hello, Brett and Chuck. As someone who wants to get into drawing as a job, could you give any advice on what to do for practice and daily drills? Cheers. May you two make even more great stories. Any?
I would say life drawing is a must. You know,
I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah, that's. I mean, you just don't get any better practice than drawing live models and doing it over and over and over again.
Learn to draw animals.
Animals too, yeah. You know, we were talking about that. I mentioned that to on another stream. How so many artists these days cannot draw horses or dogs, and I show them some artwork from Blood graphic novel, which is a werewolf a horror graphic novel that's coming out this month. Chuck and I worked on, and the artist Derla Santa Cruz, who's also the same artist on Black Tide Rising, he draws animals phenomenally.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember showing. Remember that, Chuck? I sent you some of the first pages where he's drawing horses and dogs and whatnot, because this story is set in the late 1800s. And Chuck's reaction was just like, wow, this guy can actually draw animals. And then that got me thinking, yeah, not many artists can these days because they're not classically trained. They don't take the time, you know, to do that kind of stuff. But life drawing, you know, doing gestures, doing, you know, quick 20-second to 1-minute sketches to up to 5 to 10 to 20-minute drawings where you've got a live model sitting there. And, you know, you're working with different lighting, and you're, you know, maybe they're clothed, maybe they're nude, maybe they're partially clothed. You know, all that stuff is just huge. It's huge.
Draw old people, young people, skinny people, fat people. Learn how to draw all kinds of people.
Go out into public and with your sketchbook and sit at a Starbucks or sit someplace and try and do you know, quick sketches and drawings and stuff. Like, draw people. The airport used to be a great place to go and draw people, but you know, who wants to go there nowadays?
Now you don't have to draw the lower part of their face, so
it's way easier now.
You can cut corners, right?
All right, guys, you heard it here. Brett and Chuck have advocated drawing people and drawing animals, and to shortcut that, you could just draw furry porn, and that would be perfect. So Chuck and Brett have decided furry porn is that's the art exercise you need to do.
We actually have a furry porn project that we're working on with Netflix right now.
Oh no, it's pup porn. Alien Xenomorph says sketch therapy is an agent of Tess Fowler. He also says, do not trust sketch therapy. He's undercover Marvel. Very scandalous. Overlord VHS says, love that you got Chuck Dixon on the channel. Hey, me too. But I also like Brett, even though you apparently don't. Alien Xenomorph says, sketch therapy calls you Grifter Law. That's the brand. Sleepy Gaunt says, can't stay for the full stream due to my work schedule. Just wanted to say, looking forward to the replay of this. 2 talented guests you've got here. Thank you for all the work you two have done. So, thank you, guys.
Thank you. No, I apprate it.
It wasn't
very nice.
DLV says, greetings, gents. Hail Comics, upload to BitChute. I'm working on the BitChute thing. I'm slow to change. Racuna says, hearing you talk about fixing and rebuilding reminds me of The Mouse That Roared. I'm not familiar with the story. Have either of you guys ever heard of The Mouse That Roared?
Oh yeah.
I guess I'm left out here.
I've heard it, but give me a refresher. What
it's the little country of Grand Fenwick, and they want their country rebuilt. It's a little duchy in Europe, and they decide the best way to do this is to declare war on the United States and then lose. And their army is actually medieval, and they send their army to New York City, led by Peter Sellers, and they've actually got on armor and they have crossbows and arrows.
Oh, I think
he freeze.
Chuck froze.
Oh, there. Wait.
He's blipping. Sorry. You're coming back.
Okay, yeah, that happens. Am I okay?
No. Yep, you're back now.
So they're marching in the streets of New York with
bows and arrows, and they have sallets and chainmail, and it's a funny movie. I think Sellers plays like 3 roles in it. He plays the diplomat, the Duchess of Grand Fenwick, and boy, I'm trying to remember the name of the lead character he plays.
This is obviously post Dr. Strangelove. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't have cast him as 3 characters.
I don't know if it's around the same time. It's
because Kubrick wanted him for 3 characters for that, and he broke his arm or something like that purposely.
I heard he faked breaking his arm. He didn't want to play the Slim Pickens character.
That's right. That's right.
Which thank God he didn't, because
my arm's broke.
Oh yeah. No, absolutely.
Well, he was an actor. He convinced them his arm was broke.
Right. You know what's funny about that? Kubrick never told Slim Pickens that it was a comedy. So he would play it straight.
What difference would it have made? He played
none.
God loves Slim Pickens. He was awesome, but he played every role the same way.
Yeah. I mean, that same character is in Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, and also in Blazing Saddles, largely.
1941.
Yeah.
Monica's
bomb John Wayne's house.
Here we go, toe to toe with the Rooskies.
Monica's personal fucking fiance says, "Say my full name, Nikki. I will not be censored." So, okay, I did. There you go. Dave CC94 says, "Love to catch a stream live. Please do more of these. Here, take my pesos as a bribe." Thank you. Love all the pesos. Guns Down in Hale says, "What do you guys think about The Boys?" Have you seen the show, the Amazon show, I believe? The Boys.
Yeah. I've seen season 1, which I liked. Some of the gore I kind of cringe at, but it's make believe. So season 2, interesting so far. You know what I really like about what they're doing now is they are not dropping every episode at once. They're gonna dribble them out. I think 2 a week or something like that. And I love that aspect because one of the things that I really enjoy about episodic TV is that I get a whole week to think about it and to kind of gestate it and then prepare myself. And I've been a huge Yellowstone fan. That is some of the best writing on TV. That's Taylor Sheridan, who is just an excellent writer. He did both Sicarios, Hell or High Water, Wind River. This guy writes for everybody. He's a West Texas guy. And was originally going to be an actor, and then got into a scuffle at a casting session, and ended up punching some guy out, and then decided that writing would probably be a better forte. But the whole thing with Yellowstone's driving me crazy because they pulled a Who Shot JR. They had this crazy ending of season 3, and now I've got to wait, which is what we used to do. We used to wait. You'd wait a whole summer.
Right.
And everybody would be talking about it. I can't stand the binge watching thing, man. It's just, I don't know. I just think it's the wrong move from the standpoint of storytelling. I think it's better to kind of, do weekly episodes. And so I'm excited for The Boys, and I'm hopeful that Amazon starts doing that with all of their stuff rather than just dropping everything at once. Because I don't know, it doesn't do anything for me.
I firmly disagree with you, but that's okay.
Well, and also marketing too. You want people going out there all week posting and talking about this thing, and then you kill the possibility of spoilers.
Stop giving me good reasons to do this. No,
it's smart thinking.
Binging. I will wait till they're all available and binge them all at one time.
I will counter argue that if you've written a compelling story arc that covers just 23 hours or whatever it is, that I don't need to think about the episodes individually. And if you do it right and drop them all at once, it allows me to actually go through and see it as a whole rather than as individual episodic entities. And then it also smooths out the writing so they don't have to have a story arc in each episode. So take that.
I've spent a lifetime waiting for next week. I won't do it anymore.
Right. It's funny.
What am I supposed to do? Talk to my children?
Yeah. What is this? No, I want to watch it all at once, and then I want to watch it again.
I didn't, Chuck.
To get the parts I fell asleep through.
Chuck, did you read The Boys back in the day? I think that's Garth Ennis.
I have no interest in it. The evolving superhero stories just hold no interest whatsoever to me.
See, this is what Watchmen did. The deconstruction of the superhero is how you get The Boys and other things like that. And I've never been into that. I did like Watchmen. I like the movie better. I actually think Zach improved the actual book, especially with the squid. My favorite is the director's cut of Watchmen. I don't like the ultimate cut or whatever, and I don't like the theatrical cut. I don't really get into the deconstruction of superheroes too much because I find it kind of boring. But
they're children's characters. They're characters for children. Not
anymore.
Oh, I know, not anymore. That's how they ruined them. Characters in pajamas after they've been having sex, and God knows what else.
Well, it's back to lazy writing, right? Because writing children's books and is way harder than writing
I wrote
books.
Children's books, and it is a bitch.
Because kids are smart. Sorry, what was that, Chuck? I was talking over you.
Children want a plot, and they want surprise. That's not easy to write because the kids are just about the story. They don't care about. Quentin Tarantino could never write a children's book because you can't fool kids with clever dialogue.
Right. And
Nothing against Tarantino, but kids
yeah,
demanding.
and they're unforgiving as an audience. They just
if they hate something, they hate it forever.
Yep, and just give
So
me the
true.
story. They don't yeah, you can't polish it up with spectacle. It doesn't work as well.
No.
Okay. Stooge Muffin Stuffin says the director's cut originally implies Leon slept with her. So the director's cut of Leon the Professional. I haven't seen that, but the beautiful
Well,
thing
I know.
What?
It is a French movie.
Yeah, well, that's true. Nailed it. Rogue
Those
says,
frogs.
thoughts on how anime and manga are outpacing comics?
Got a bigger audience, worldwide. They've got a bigger audience. I mean, you look at Webtoons, which is basically a manga mobile phone app. It's got 52 million subscribers. I mean, American comics have never had that many readers. Never.
Right.
Never. It's also considered a high form of art over there. I mean, comics, visual storytelling is on the same level as cinema. They really do consider it fine art, and they celebrate their artists and they pay them well.
Yeah, they treat them right.
And they treat them like rock stars. Where over here, I mean, how many comic book artists have GoFundMe's because they have cancer or they have bills to pay?
Taxes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, honestly, Americans usually like their artists better dead than alive, not the Japanese. And the other thing is they go for the long format. They're much more into the long format, which is what I like these days. I'd much rather have a 98-page graphic novel than a 22-page floppy comic. Because I like that more novel kind of approach, the long format. It's why floppies are failing right now. The graphic novel market is a $750 million market. I mean, it's huge. It's the largest chunk of the comic book industry right now. And then you've got floppies at about half that, maybe a little bit less. And then you've got digital, which is barely even registers.
Right.
And there's manga for everybody. I mean, if you like baseball, there's a manga. If you like golf, there's a manga. One of my favorite mangas is about surf casting. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's the one thing, like, that's what I don't understand about Japan and anime and manga is my rule for anime is always ninjas, robots, or ninjas that are robots. And so
or kaijus, you got to have the big monster.
Well, because that's what I started watching anime, back with Vampire Hunter D and Akira and Robot Carnival and Lensman when they brought him over on Showtime or whatever it was. And I was like, this is awesome. And that's all it was. And then suddenly my friends who we all watched anime together. We watched Evangelion and Cowboy Bebop and stuff. And then they're like, here, let's watch Tokyo Godfathers. And I'm like, oh, cool. That sounds violent. Nope. It's like a comedy story about like three men and a little lady or whatever. I'm like, what the hell is this? I don't understand this. Where's the violence? Where's the catastrophic bloodshed?
They're a really interesting but strange culture because they have adopted so many Western themes and values, and that's largely because MacArthur, after World War II, basically rebuilt that country and ruled over it. He wrote their constitution. They love their baseball, they love their bebop jazz, they love so many things that are American, and then you look at some other things that they like, and you're kind of like, that's really weird, very strange. Yeah, I don't get it either. But Nick, I was like you. I started out on G-Force, Star Blazers, Robotech, and then started to move into.
God, I love Robotech.
I'm still waiting for my live action. I mean, that's one thing that we need a live action adaptation of is Robotech. But I remember watching Robotech for the first time, and when there would be and I was obviously watching G.I. Joe and Transformers at the same time. Started watching Robotech, and I thought to myself, there's no parachutes when these planes explode. They're killing everybody, and then they kill Roy. Then they kill off Roy Fokker within like the 5th episode, and I was just like what is going on? I hope my mom never catches wind of this.
Right. Yeah, don't. Oh God! Spoiler alert on Roy's death. By the
But
way,
she, you know, Robotech is basically a soap opera with a lot of action sort of mixed into it. And I thought, I always felt that the Japanese stuff was a little bit more sophisticated. And as a kid, strangely enough, that really appealed to me.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely.
You know?
yeah. Oh yeah, and it was Ben Dixon dying though. That was fine. That guy sucked. No.
That's a tough one, dude. Yeah, because
Stu-
he gets friendly fire. So that's the sucker thing about that.
Stooge Muffin Stuff, it says, did you watch Black Lagoon yet? If not, don't forget to watch the dub. I have not. I barely watch anything. I haven't watched TV. Well, I watched a little bit in Florida with my parents, but I just don't have time to watch a bunch of TV lately, especially now. Bad Vibe says, Netflix is apparently being investigated for QTs in Texas and is in relation to the earlier chat. I'll take a look at it. Leo Breaker 49 says, will Black Tide Rising be going in demand?
I believe, yes, it will. Yes, we had that conversation.
Gotcha.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But don't wait for it to go in demand.
No. Buy it now.
Yeah. Back it now so we can, I mean, if you don't back it now, we don't meet the goal. There will be no in demand.
Right. Buy it now. Buy it twice. Rhino says Quentin Tarantino couldn't write a children's story, but Michael Bay could. All about the story, baby.
Did either of you guys see Pain and Gain?
Michael Bay has the single greatest directing moment of his entire career in that movie, and I love it.
I totally agree. I love 13 Hours, but when I saw Pain and Gain, and then I learned that it was a real story, obviously they kind of teased that. I could not believe it. The barbecue scene with The Rock.
That's where he nails it.
I fell on the fucking floor. I was crying. I could not believe it. I could not believe it. I have always found that guy to be extremely talented because you have to be to make those kind of commercial films. People think that when you make pop culture, you're making things for the lowest common denominator, that it's easy. It's the hardest thing in the world to do. And that guy is like a super movie director when it comes to doing commercial stuff. I mean, he not only has an instinct and a nose for it, but then he knows how to go in there and implement it. And I just love seeing this guy who's known for, you always joke that whenever there's a Michael Bay movie, it's like lens flares and explosions every 2 seconds. And Pain and Gain did have some lens flares, but and it looked like a Michael Bay film, but it was just brilliant storytelling. I just loved it. And Marky Mark, man, I mean, that guy just kills it. I love that guy.
Oh yeah, he's terrific. That scene though, when he's barbecuing the hands, and it pauses and it says, it's important to remind you that this is a true story, and you're like,
it says something like this actually happened.
Yeah,
like an arrow. I was just like, I couldn't believe it.
Because you've just watched the most ridiculously stupid criminal acts in the history of mankind over and over and over. It's like, this happened, though.
I know.
I love it.
Criminals are.
Yeah.
I mean, even the scene, in the beginning where Mark is doing the crunches and he's like, I'm big, I'm strong, I'm hot, and they have the camera mounted on him as he's going back and forth. I mean, just creatively, everything visually and the story. I was just like, why isn't this movie up for like some kind of an award? I mean, it's brilliant writing.
It should have won all of it. And one of my other favorite scenes from that movie is when they've just killed the guy right in his house, and Marky Mark's freaking out, and The Rock's sitting there, and he grabs the weights. He's like, I got to get a pumping.
Dude, that's my. I had a moment like that the other day. I had a census worker come to my door, interrupted my leg day. I'm sitting there doing legs, and I'm getting a good pump on. He like opened up the door, and I'm like, how long is this gonna take? He's like, 5 questions. 5 questions down. I'm like, calm the fuck down. I got to get a pump. Slam the door. I swear to God, I ripped it from the movie, but that's my favorite line in that movie, in that scene, because he and Anthony are like arguing, and he's like, calm the fuck down. I got to get a pump. And he starts,
and The Rock just sits there and he's like, get it. Get it.
He gets it.
It's perfect
like,
meathead interaction. I loved it. God, it was great.
He's like morons convincingly like that. He really is.
Yeah. I love that. I love The Rock. He's like, good. Take a moment. Take
Yeah.
a moment. Yeah. Yeah.
Leo Breaker 49 says Bills got paid today, so can't. Would love to, but can't. Oh, that's backing Black Tide Rising. Well, it'll still be up. It'll still be up after next payday, so check it out then. Felipe Mube says, hi, Nick. Please check your email. I sent you an Indian whiskey, but UPS said you moved. I used an address you gave me in January. Can you please help them? Yes, I will help them. I hate them. I hate UPS so much. I still own that house and can take mail there, but UPS decides that I can't. Alexander says Leafy got suspended on Twitch. Well, of course. That's Twitch is the province of thoughts, and he called out the thoughterry. Okay. Well, guys, that's the chats. I think we should wrap up. Everybody should check out Black Tide Rising. Like I said, I think you may find someone very soon who you'll have to kill in your story. So,
yeah. You can be one of those zombies that we kill in the story. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
So if you want to be killed by Chuck Dixon, we can make it happen.
Yes.
Yes. So, is there anything you guys want to say before we go? Before we wrap up?
Support good comics.
Yeah, absolutely. Support independent comics. Support independent comic creators like us, because it is the only outlet to original and interesting and new content. And also, you're going to get far more creativity and innovation out of independent comics like Black Tide Rising than you're going to find at your local comic book shop.
Absolutely.
It just ain't happening.
Yeah. All right, guys, check it out. Thank you so much for watching. Join me again at 11 p.m. If Chuck and Brett, if you could stay on for just a second. I always like to say goodbye to my guests in private. So stay on after we end the show for just a second. Thank you guys for hanging out today. Come back at 11 p.m. We'll have Ty Beard on, and we'll be having a fun show there too. And until then, guys, have a good day. Peace. Peace.